one of the reasons why I think AI imagery was so hard for creative folks to get into was not just because of like, the seeing stuff almost virtually instantly getting made in front of them, but it was also just like the Discord itself. The linear feed can be a little confusing when you're talking about creative minded people that need like flowcharts and storyboards and all sorts of other visual aids in order to make a story, particularly. And so when they see like streams of images and stuff, I guess from a production standpoint, it can be a little jarring because you only really see 3 or 4 of the images at any time, but you have to scroll through the feed to see them all.
I can give a cryptic hint that storytelling tools being worked on might help.
I am so stoked for that. Like it's gonna be a game changer. It really is. I'm excited to see this like massive decentralized storytelling that's gonna happen because of that. Like where essentially all sorts of folks can jump into each other's stories. And but what if like Ronald McDonald was there? You know what I mean? Like just random character inserts and stuff like that. And I'm sure there's going to be all sorts of like corporate mascots and things that people will do. But my goal is to encourage original characters. It is something that I believe strongly in. It's an educational thing. We get so much media that's advertised to us, that's sold to us, that it's hard to be able to expect the general public to make original characters and do all that stuff. But so I guess I'll get into that real quick here. So I have something called the black box. You can submit to it if you like. But essentially the black box is a Google form that you can submit to that allows us to see what characters you've created, and we can use them in our stream. Was some of the results that we got from the last stream, because we got a total of 25 responses, which is like the biggest response I've ever had because it's not as simple as asking for you to subscribe or like or whatever. There's a whole questionnaire out of this. It's there's all sorts of convoluted reasons why I ask these questions, but the more exciting part for me is actually this, where we can get an alignment chart for all the characters, and we can start to see what sort of story you all wanted to see. And I'm only going to nix and it's going to stay in the black box, but I'm going to just nix the instructional manuals and textbooks from what I decide for the story. And the reason why is I knew that a lot of people were going to click that simply because I'm doing an educational stream. But overall, we have all sorts of different genres and such, and the 2 winning were fantasy and avant-garde experimental art. So we're gonna have a lot of fun with this one, y'all. An avant-garde experimental fantasy. That's gonna be fun. It's totally up my alley. So, and then as for the alignment charts, these are actually broken, like they're broken down by individual. So when we go through the black box and we start building characters, the decisions for their characters for these is kind of like playing a D&D game, right? Where the alignment chart helps me know where the characters are going to be going, what sort of decisions they're going to be making. And we will refer on to this in the future. So that's very cool to see. At the moment, we should probably let me check my notes here real quick because I know that I have something I wanted to bring up here. We're going to get into panning here soon, and that will let us be able to expand on the turnarounds. But and also, okay, yes. So let's just get into that because I was quite happy with being able to establish continuity of the environment, right? Just by using word-only prompts, we're able to retain continuity in the environment on all 4 of the images that we make. That's entirely done with just using words only and then injecting the images afterward. But if you want to do a blend, right? That's just including the URLs and the text for the prompt all at the same time. That'll have a lot less continuity, but it will still give you a lot of variation and interesting results. But let's just say you didn't really get the results you wanted. With one of these streams here, or sorry, with the last stream, we did this one and I was getting some really wonky anatomy. And that was because I was including URLs of him sitting that is not accurate to what we're injecting into. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the pan features to try to expand on this turnaround. So let's go ahead and hit left here. And I'll just do it without writing anything first. And then we'll go ahead and also write profile view. And I'm going to write this ahead of the image because this is something that, I realized pretty quickly when I started doing this stuff that the order of the words that you write matters a lot. It'll dictate essentially the priority list of your images. So as these two start coming in here, we can start to see the results of that. And the pan feature is essentially how you can make really accurate turnarounds or expanding your turnarounds. So I'm going to zoom in on this. As you can see, we actually got a lot of continuity out of just these turnarounds here, and we can essentially start to pick the emotional state of this character based on the results that we get from this. And that's entirely by using pan left, pan right, that kind of thing. You can also do this with zoom. So, and this is the second result we just got in here. And you can see that the deviations are so predictable. It's amazing. I love using this feature, but but there's one thing we didn't get, which is an actual profile. We got the character still looking at the image here, which we could change the image reference and stuff to kind of lean the results that way. But I mostly wanted to show you all that the pan features let us be able to retain a level of continuity I haven't seen before when it comes to this stuff. So we can now pick one of these. I'm just going to go with this first one here. You guys are going to see me, and I'll jump over here really quick. You guys are going to see me picking the initial options from a lot of these. And the reason why is because I don't want to just re-roll a bunch to get exactly what I'm looking for, but instead I'm doing a demonstration, right? So if you're going to do this on your own time, you probably want to run a couple different pans and see what the results are on that. Zoom out isn't going to allow you to have remix mode. It's just going to zoom out. It is that's the same with 1.5 and 2. But custom zoom, however, brings up the remix window. So that's very cool. So that means that if we change the zoom to 1 at the end here, then what's going to happen is it's not going to zoom at all. It's just going to give us this, this new aspect ratio. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this aspect ratio to 3:1, which is 3 wide and 1 high. So it'll be 3 times as wide as it is tall. So with the zoom function, look at that. I'm going to actually upres the first result here because we are getting some really cool additional posing, but we also got our profile just from the zoom. Look at that. We got profiles. Isn't that cool? And you even have some different emotional states that'll come out of this. And you can decide whether or not these states make sense for this character. Like if this is a little too cocky of a smile and stuff, just don't include this on your character sheet. But the full body aspects of all this stuff is super cool to see, where we now have a proper face front. We now have a proper profile and even different multiple expressions that are here. Super cool to see. But if we now go to the custom zoom, these are 4 results. They don't really look like it, but they are 4 different results where only thing that's kept from each one is the first 3, right? So this lets us very, very quickly be able to create dynamic turnarounds for characters entirely with using the zoom functions or the pan functions. Just do whatever you feel is right. Zoom tends to give me the most usable results, while pan is more useful for storytelling, and I'll get into that here in a bit. I actually got a couple of pings from some seasoned power users of Midjourney that were upset with me for not getting into the pan features more. So I'm happy to see that we're covering that right now, and I can I can appease the masses on that one. I mostly wanted to show you all how you are able to quickly not just expand the scene, but get more usable repeatability. If you're doing storytelling, you probably don't want this repeatability, because you don't want multiple versions of the same character in the room, right? So the idea here is that we are just going to isolate each one of these that we want, and then use that as a reference, which is how we used /prefer to create, the character Bible and such. Now that we have covered what I missed from the last stream, I'm going to show you guys something that lets us be able to create comic layouts, which essentially lets us be able to start storytelling with this. But it's important that I start getting into comics because it lets me be able to establish how how Midjourney is going to interpret some of this imagery here. So let's just go ahead and write comic panels. We had eating pizza as the last prompt. Feel free to write any suggestions of what you believe this character can be doing. But it is something that we are essentially, let's just do a slice of life story. Story is going to give us some really out there results every once in a while. But if we just do redhead, and then I'm going to use Niji because the character is an anime character. So we don't have to use Niji, but that's what I'm going to do today. You can actually prompt anime outside of Niji. And that's entirely just by writing anime, right? But I'm particularly interested in non-Niji comics because it lets us be able to get a little more Americana out of the whole thing. Slice of life story with a pizza sounds cheesy. Oh yeah. That line was just as cheesy. That's great. Let's just say sitting down at the restaurant or sitting down at the table, at the dinner table. Why not? Just so I can get a little more of a scene. And then also, I'm going to add an aspect ratio of AR23. So we're going to run one without Niji, and then we'll run one with Niji. And if the non-Niji version gives us like super realistic stuff, then we're probably not gonna. So it's funny because I with turbo mode I'm seeing the results of my mistakes so much quicker. So this is great. So with the results here we got there, you'll notice that it's all women. It's all the center subject is female, right? So what we need to do is we need to include a pronoun. We're gonna do he. And the other thing you'll notice is that we didn't get any comic panels. So I'm going to just force comic panels, or at least try to at least. It's not always a guarantee. By putting a nice big high weight on panels. You'd add weights by doing the double dot here, and then adding a number at the end of it. So the thing is that the higher that number is, the more likely you're going to just be pulling random stuff from latent, like just from the box. And you can see here, we no longer have a redhead eating pizza. We have some ridiculous chaos. I probably would have used this for a Victor Gnarly comic, honestly. Like this is pretty up my alley when it comes to weirdness. But let's go ahead and drop that the panel value. So I'll drop that from 4 to 2. And hopefully we'll get a little less chaos out of that. Oh, no, there we go. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at Niji here real quick. Yeah, you can see here that what we ended up making out of that was not at all what we wanted. There's no panels in here at all. We could inject into this one on the first here and see what happens. And I'll show you guys exactly why a lot of this stuff is exciting when you use non-Niji stuff. So just for the sake of demonstration, we'll get into the Niji stuff here in a minute. But for the sake of demonstration, I'm going to show what it looks like when you inject anime characters into non-anime scenes. So we have this character here. Earlier, I had made a /prefer command. So you can do that by hitting /prefer option set and then create or just use all your URLs in there. I guess I'll double back and explain that again later. But what I'm going to do is hit variation subtle and then write redhead, which is my code for all the URLs that represent this character. There's only 4 of them right now. We can make a much bigger list later. But we're going to also do that with variation strong. But you can see here that injecting into non-anime scenes recreated the anime because it's whenever you do image injection, the image weight is so high that it's going to influence the final product much more significantly. Isn't that cool? Yeah, anime versus non-anime. Yeah, we can actually switch from Niji to non-Niji just with panning. And we might get into that here in a bit. But now this is the same result, but with variation strong. And you'll notice that there's a lot more merger between the two. So I'll kind of scroll back up to here. Here's the original. You notice that it's a pretty dark shirt that the character is wearing. So the hoodie on the character switched from red to a dark color. It kind of finds a median in between the two, which is actually why I tend to avoid blends, why I tend to avoid starting off with images and then telling it, okay, I'm going to do I'm going to prompt that. I've been trying, so this is a question or statement from Christina. I've been trying to make a character since last week, and I have found that use style raw in order to keep it from changing art style from my reference image. Yes, the reason I didn't get into the styles is that one, I wanted to keep the initial character continuity stream a bit simple. I didn't really want to use too many codes and such, including chaos and all sorts of other ones that do things that I think people don't really know what they're doing. You know what I mean? Like, you know, weird and chaos are like there's like definitions behind them. They're not just I'm gonna make this weird. Maybe that's like the summation of it, but it has to do with the deviations between each panel and blah 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 blah. I didn't want to get into all that. I wanted to keep it simple, but style raw is how I create assets. How I create parts of my comic, not the whole image. And when it comes to using style raw, we can get a lot of continuity out of that simply because it's not deviating into all sorts of different directions. So rather than using blend function, you're using images in a regular prompt. Yes. And so the reason why that is because the wording, the image is essentially dictating the intention purely. There is no influence from the image at all. Whenever we do image injection, there is going to be the context of the image actually influences the prompt. So by starting off with character turnarounds in your prompts, you're essentially telling it, oh, I got to make this kind of look like a character turnaround too. But you don't want that. You want to have it reference the character turnarounds for the character that's inside of the word only prompt. Overall, though, I try to avoid codes whenever I'm doing these initial tutorials and stuff. When we start getting into like crazy wacky land where all sorts of things can go wrong, I'll get more into codes, and also seeds and all that kind of stuff. I personally don't delve into seeds at all, and it's just because I tend to not be happy with the result. I like to just keep diving deeper and deeper into the sauce. So for comic panels, it is much easier to get a usable result with Niji. It's probably from referencing mangas and all sorts of other stuff, but the comic panels you see we have continuity between each one of these, and we don't have another character. You'll never have a secondary character that just shows up in here unless you tell it that that's what you want. So what I'm gonna do though is since we see we get usable results out of this, it's just the wrong gender. We can actually come into here and hit /imagine. Again, I'm not using any images. I'm just writing out my intention, and then I'm going to put a gender. Because we're getting mostly female results from the main thing here, if I put him at the very end as my pronoun, it could very well be a very effeminate or because I say that only because we are getting women out of the initial result. So I'm going to put it a little higher up. We're going to put him right after comic panels. And then I'm also going to include the code AR23. We will now look at the results that we got from our redhead here. And then after all of this, I promise we will start to use your all's characters. I just really wanted to cover the things that I missed in my last stream, and we can kind of go from there. Okay, cool. All right, so we're getting some real edginess out of some of this stuff, which is not a surprise to me. A lot of anime protagonists tend to be on the edgy side of things.
The red eyes.
Yeah, right. Yeah, the red eyes look really cool in this. If it, by the way, the whole reason that Victor, my OC character, has golden eyes is because one of the prompts came back gold, and a lot of my topics are about like capitalism and all that stuff too. So I was like, ooh, money, money, money. Perfect. I really like that prompt. Edgy redhead in anime, never. Oh yeah, no, it's fiery anger. I'm getting some what is that fire station anime with the characters are all firefighters fighting demons and stuff like that. That's the vibe I'm getting from this guy here. Fire Force, yes, yes. I did like Fire Force a lot. It has a little bit of too much fan service in it, but it's good. I'm gonna just re-roll this a couple times, and I want to see if we can get a prompt where another character's more in the frame. So I tend to re-roll my comic prompts a lot, and especially since my goal here is to really get a good template for what sort of story I want to tell here. And I haven't provided anything beyond him, slice of life, and redhead. Okay. If I wanted to accomplish a specific goal, like say I had a script written up ahead of time, I would just start placing the establishment inside of here. So like I established that it's a character inside of a certain location or whatever, that will all be shown here. So let's just kind of look at the results we got here. But yeah, so I would say that out of these results, I'm kind of leaning on I'm kind of leaning at the bottom left one here. We haven't given any instruction of an exact story, but we can at least see what sort of world this is going to generate for us. The character's a lot more moody, a lot more like aggressive than we had it earlier, but we haven't done any image injection at all. Okay, so just for the sake of the folks that don't have that didn't watch me do the prefer, I am going to grab the URLs from our little character Bible, which again is this here. It's these 4 images. Okay. Now I'm going to scroll down on the comic panels, and then I'm going to hit both variation subtle, paste that, and variation strong, and then paste the URLs. And making sure you hit space in between the prompt and your images, like your image URLs. Otherwise, the URL is going to break and Midjourney is going to get angry at you. But by doing this injection method, we keep all the continuity of the comic, but we start to get the character in there. And it's just based on similarities or comparisons between the two. So immediately, we have the timidness again. We have the shyness of the character comes back. And it's all because our reference images have that emotion baked into it. It has, look, he's even crying. Oh, look, he's so sad. Like all of these could potentially be useful in some sort of scenario or whatever. It lets us be able to say, hey, I want as many options as possible for this particular composition. And so when it comes to making the comics, I don't really necessarily love all the layouts that Midjourney does. It's either really, really like common, like these like just blocky vertical panels, or it's complete chaos. And I kind of love the chaos ones a little more because it gives me a little bit of interesting variety here. So this is a variation strong of this image here. And notice we got most of the comic panels are gone. And that's because we are doing an injection with variation strong. Strong is going to bring the images far more back to the original, whatever you put in the front there. There's still comic panels in there. It's just kind of lost in the turnarounds, right? So let's actually upres the third one here and kind of get an idea of what's hidden to the sides of this image here. It's a lot easier for me to explain these things as like worlds that we're opening up into, but the reality is that nothing actually exists on either side of this. But we can hit make square, which is going to encourage the removal of these black bars on the side here. And we can then just start panning right and see what sort of story actually Midjourney is going to start creating for us. Do any of the parameters affect the variety of layouts in your experience? So probably the biggest influence is the image weight, which is why I don't use Niji all the time. I have an IW, and then write a number like 2 or 1. The 2 being the strongest for image weight, and 1 being the default, I believe. And then you can go as low as I think 0.05. And essentially that just tells it how low sorry, how much weight that image has from your injection. So if we can actually just kind of demonstrate that real quick. First, I have to find a non-Niji prompt. So we'll go ahead with this one here. Okay. And I am going to just create a blend with this. So we'll come in here, hit copy paste. I'll grab the URLs again.
Do you make comics by just using whatever they give you as a panel? And then have you ever tried doing that?
Very rarely I'm using the layouts that Midjourney gives me because my intentions tend to be a little more ahead than what Midjourney is giving me. And what I mean by that is that I have reasons why I'm prompting things. Like
Yeah.
I have a goal, you know.
It can be a
Um,
fun game.
yeah. Especially since I'm going to be asking you guys to jump in and remix on my own stuff here in a minute. What I'm going to do is add the code hyphen IW. That's going to be image weight and then 2. What that's going to do is it's going to make it far more anime as a response in here. And that's simply because we are forcing it with a much higher, but it's going to look so much more like the turnarounds, which means that it means it's more predictable and really not very useful for getting a diversity of results. And because we did a blend, we actually lost some character continuity as well. But you can see I'm not using anime, y'all. Like this is the result of just pumping up the image weight real high. And we can get a little more control from image weights. But because I don't want to get into codes and I don't really want to get too deep into that, I tend to use chaos a lot more for my main comic series. And the reason why that is that it lets me get into that avant-garde realm of Midjourney. Now I'm going to do a word only prompt. We're not going to use any images, no image weights, but instead I'm going to do chaos of 50. We are going to see what sort of just diversity this gives us here. And you're going to get like pop art. You're going to get all sorts of like environments and things. So I'll just kind of zoom into here real quick. So look at that. It barely referred to the gender at all on here. It just kind of did whatever the heck it wanted to do. But this gets us into the funnier side of latent space, like where there's all sorts of like interesting things, interesting compositions that you wouldn't have gotten normally otherwise. But it's still a finished image, like especially this one right here, the scene which looks like it's kind of like at Miami Beach, an Art Deco sort of environment here.
That one's my favorite.
Right? Look at that. That's amazing, isn't it? Like it's
that on
Epcot.
my wall.
It's Epcot. Look, there's Epcot.
Epcot.
Yeah, Epcot was my favorite theme park, and all my friends were really upset when I said, "Oh, let's go to Epcot as the first park," and they just wanted to go ride like the Matterhorn or whatever. And I'm like, "No, I want to go to China."
The whole world.
Yeah, exactly. But with the chaos command though, I'm mostly just trying to get some like wild diversity here, from these results, but I didn't get any comic panels. I didn't get any of the things I asked for. So we can just drop that chaos a little bit. We'll drop it to like 10. Any amount of chaos is going to be nuts. And this is a little bit of a tangent. I'm sorry. I'm not going to click your link just in case there's like nudie bits and stuff in there. You are far more likely to get into the stuff you shouldn't see with using chaos, in my opinion. Let's kind of look at this. We're getting some like really, really bizarre. Still the thing is now we have retained the comic style, but this is what I meant by getting into realms that I guess Midjourney wouldn't necessarily like you to get into, which is the horror gore kind of stuff. But I love this. I love this. Like that looks amazing right here. So I'm also not going to click your spoiler link because I learned from I learned from the last stream that it might be about cat boys or something like that. So let's go ahead and just upres this third one here because I want to show you guys if you're talking about like comics and stuff like that, it's very often that I'm doing odd injections, right? Because I really want to get something interesting out of this. So we're going to do Victor, which is my code that I've built for Victor that's going to have all of his base URLs in there. And you can see that they're all in here. This is actually public, by the way. If you wanted to create your own comics with my OC, you're more than welcome to. But I want to show you guys what this looks like. And I'll also do one just for funsies. Let's do one with variation strong as well. We lost his outfit, which is a like he doesn't wear double jackets like this. It's usually just a button up. But we have my character as this kind of genderless mid character. But this I would have probably used this and then done like some in painting on the hands and stuff like that. Like this is totally up my alley, but it is the wrong outfit. Now with Variation Strong though, it relies so much on the image weights that Victor is back. We have my character again, and sometimes he has that like button up that's over and wears a gray shirt underneath it. That is all continuous to my character. And the face is going to be slightly different because we are injecting into a female character, so there's a little bit of like softness to his cheeks and things like that. But then sometimes he's just straight up Victor with the V. The whole reason his name is Victor, by the way, is because his chin is a V. There's a lot of baked in subliminal messaging that I have within my character sheets, and so whenever I see the V, I know that I have my character. Yeah, there's a lot of V's on Victor's art. And that was all with intention. So if I kind of show you guys what Victor's base model looks like here. This is the base image. This is actually a generated derivative of my hand-drawn sketches. So if I now just start cycling through the other Victor references here, we start with the face front, then we have a profile, and then we have the back, which is not continuous really. It actually has his hair is wrong in the back, but it generates more what I want. The reason why there's a blowout of light color on the top here is because I want to have some dynamic lighting with his hair, and this kind of helps encourage that. So this is the first hand-drawn version of Victor, where his teeth are all mangled, his whatever. It's essentially like me trying to incorporate a character that's just super loud and super kind of a little bit villainous in that way. He also has a sense of like grittiness about his teeth, like he's clearly not been to the dentist and stuff. So I wanted to make sure that that was all visible in Victor's prompts. So almost all of his references has teeth shown almost like vampiric, where there's like spikiness to it and stuff. But see, we have another V right here. It's just in the other direction. I use a lot of V's in my art. Okay, it's just I like pointy things and pointiness. So that comes across in the prompt results. But I'll just kind of cycle through some of these here real quick. Oh, there's one more here. You'll notice at the end of Victor's prompts is this really weird, very particular image. And the reason why is because whenever Victor enters someone's comics or in my story canon, he actually is a what is called an egregore, or it's a form of like of summoned entity, and he comes from this like faded, impossible world. And I'll step away from my screen here. You can actually see where Victor's house is. He lives in this kind of realm between places. It is meant to be this kind of fog that blurs in between worlds that he can walk from point A to point B, from world to world or whatever. And that's how I've made the canon for the character, is that he's everybody's canon. If I do something, it's affecting your canon. You know what I mean? And like it's really interesting to kind of see the reaction from that. You know, whenever we're streaming, it's I tried to keep it at least a little bit fresh by doing little world building stuff like this. Yes, so I want to say Leafy, and I'll jump back over here real quick. Whoop. Leafy was like, I love the word egregore. Yeah. So the reason I use that phrase is because a lot of my storytelling revolves around the idea of black magic, and black magic being something that can be used incorrectly. It's a form of magic that's dangerous, right? And I wanted to give that sort of alert, that warning to creative people by saying that, there's I try to not use words like Luddite or anything like that. It's just offensive. I just really don't. I don't think you only get flies with vinegar, right? So I instead wanted to kind of impact the level of change that can happen by incorporating generative tech inside of your creative workflows. The concept of an egregore was something where it's basically a collective thought that becomes a person or becomes a personification And what I started to notice with my own art, like my own sketches that I was drawing by hand, was that whenever I ran them through Midjourney /describe here, so in fact, I was using clip interrogator, but it's the same thing. We can kind of show this here. So I'm going to take one of Victor's image prompts here. Let's just do this one here. So I'm going to do a /describe on Victor here. We can kind of see that we get all sorts of like different like descriptions of what it thinks of what is it of this drawing of Victor, but we have a couple of like hints at how this at how this character is born. If we kind of come into here and take a closer look, we have certain words that seem a bit odd. Like for example, cartoon core, manticore. It essentially is like a silhouette plus, where it takes in some of the behavioral archetypes of the imagery, and you'll see that repeating when you start to use these phrases. So for me anyway, rat punk kept coming up. So let's do rat punk here real quick. And then I'm going to do a negative on rat. So just do no rat. So that's how I learned Wimmel Builder, description of one of my own images, one of my favorite prompts. Yes, right? It's really cool to like find little nuggets about your own stuff, right? And this is really where it makes me really, really frustrated with my fellow creative folks. Like there's so much utility just by being able to run /describe or an image interrogator or clip interrogator on your art. And they just by uploading the image, there are, a lot of them get worried that their art is going to be taken from them in some way, that it's going to be used in some database or whatever. I'm just going to give you guys this is something you can tell everybody. Midjourney doesn't actually save any of the images that you give it at all. Everything is inside of, like anything that's inside that was used to train, Midjourney. You injecting URLs doesn't actually change the brain of Midjourney at all. That can only happen from Midjourney's training. You notice that we suddenly get some really cool type fonts, get some really cool compositions of the characters and stuff, but it's kind of all over the place in terms of the actual results of this. So let's just go ahead and add guitar as well. So if I now remove rat and add guitar, you're going to start to see suddenly a lot more rat-like aesthetic, which I guess is what Midjourney saw in my sketches, was like this kind of ratty art style. But we can come into here and we start to see, look at these punks. You know what I mean? Like that, right? They're just cool. I want to see a whole movie with just like these two guys. You know what I mean? But here is something that I noticed with the rat punk. The ears and the position of the eyes, and particularly the kind of circular eyes that you tend to see out of this, it'll always give like goggles or some sort of circularness to it. That is actually in full display on my comics. Secret of Nim. Oh, you're going to make me go on another tangent if you say that. Anyway, but I wanted to show here is where I start to incorporate rat punk. Victor is kind of like a generic anime protagonist for the most part. Black hair, spiky, whatever. But then whenever he uses an ability, he has the rat punk prompt baked in there. So what that does is it causes, and it's really hard for me to zoom in on this, but what it causes is the ears to become more undulated outward. They tend to drop a little bit, and we get this kind of really interesting sort of like I'm gonna like a little mischievous, little more aggressive in that way. But I very selectively use that prompt in order to help encourage different kinds of, essentially states of Victor. This is what I can do to just subtly nudge it left or right, and that's entirely with using, the variation subtle button. So, for example, if I come into here and we'll just take the one I think looks the most like Victor, which I think is going to be the fourth one here. And just like we did with the image variation, or sorry, the image injection, where we take all the URLs and inject it into a word-only prompt, we are now going to do a subtle, and then I'm going to add in the front of it rat punk. And this is going to, probably anthropomorphize the character a bit. If I put variation strong, it's going to immensely anthropomorphize the character. And then even where I put the word rat punk is going to change the usage of that phrasing. So let's go ahead and by the way, most of Victor's music would be described as rat punk too. But if we come into here,
Guitar.
yes, he plays guitar but doesn't actually know how to play. He just pretends like he does. Yeah, it's electric, definitely electric. At one point, I summoned Fred Durst as a Pokemon. It's like it's just one of those days. Got to give me something to break, and that is the most basic music, like guitar chord ever. It's da da like that's the whole thing. Yeah. Anyway, so he summons Fred Durst to fight this other character here. And I call it millennial cringe and stuff like that. It's just me having a lot of fun with Midjourney, honestly.
I love that Fred Durst is still kind of a joke here in the 2003s or 23s.
Oh yeah, no. There's a reason why I used Fred Durst, and that's because he made a music video using AI. He made a video where he is Putin and all of his bandmates are different political leaders. Because of that, I was like, if you're going to use AI, then I'm going to use AI, and you're going to be in my comic. That was my snarky attitude for this character here. In terms of a lot of my intention behind this comic was to basically say that there's a new kind of world that we're walking into, and that's why he's walking forward. This is when the Silicon Gods began to walk. That world is going to be where everyone is a content creator. Everyone is able to make things to view to experience the idea of storytelling as a visual medium without the frustration and frankly the limiter of practice and effort. And that may sound like a big negative to creative folks, but the reality for me anyway is that I'm just seeing people actually get fulfillment from their creative expression that is very meaningful. I consider AI imagery a form of art therapy. It is just seeing people be able to make entire stories and entire narratives, seeing people be able to tell their stories in ways that is really really like personalized and really made for them, means that they don't have to go through the rat race. See rat. Go through the rat race of Hollywood in order to make stories, to make movies, to make television, and I think that's where we're heading to as a medium. But I personally think, or am excited about the ability for everybody to make stories in ways that isn't just I'm making some MS Paint. Everyone was able to do this beforehand, obviously, but they get fulfillment from it. They get a sense of like, wow, I actually made this. This is something that's really cool. And people can argue that that's somewhat artificial or fabricated, but it doesn't matter. You're happy, you know. I see the benefit from it more than the negative, when a lot of other creative people are seeing negatives, and maybe only negatives, you know.
It's really sad. I think a lot of people are they really want to be mad. But
Yeah. Well, it's a lot easier to, like, misery loves company, right? You know? So like it's really easy to give a loudspeaker to something that's upsetting and frustrating or whatever. I won't comment on too much. I just really, personally anyway, I see the benefit from so many people being able to tell stories. I have sadly lost 3 of my friends due to self-harm in my life, and it is something that entirely was birthed out of the it's a little hard for me to talk about, but yeah, it's essentially a lot of those people who go into entertainment don't realize that the cards are stacked against them immensely. The acting alone has the highest unemployment rate of almost any industry. It's like 94% or something like that. You know, they really tried it. They really tried to get out there, but somebody told them that they weren't worth it anymore, and they took that to heart. You know, and it all came because they wanted to tell a unique story. That's the only thing they wanted to do, was just just to be a storyteller, and the world threw them out.
The world could really use some new blood in that arena anyway. Like it's just
Right.
people trying to keep their money in their positions, and like you've made enough money. You're older now. Let somebody else have a chance.
Yeah. I mean, it just really comes down to the fact that I I I see mental health as being something that's taken advantage of from other, like, especially by the people in power. Um, and I say power very ambiguously. Like it can be power like influence online and whatnot. You just have a ton of followers, or it's real power. It's money, it's whatever. But the propaganda um, is an important element to kind of talk about with this, because we don't really know how how AI imagery is being used right now, because it's advanced so much that we can barely tell what is or isn't generated anymore. There are still tells. And Kinky and I have gone through that before of kind of going through some of the tells, or that are current. But I think it's going to come to a point where we just accept it, where we accept that everything is potentially not done the way that it looks. My very first issue, and I'll just kind of jump into that really quick before I finish. My comic is actually dedicated to my three friends who've passed away. That's essentially what motivates me to keep making this kind of stuff, even when people tell me I'm a terrible person sometimes for doing it. Um, it's because I know that they would have liked this story. They would have liked to read this. So, and I would have wanted to read the stuff that they would have made with this. So that's a little bit of a personal insight. Oh, thank you. It's the thing is that, like, in the first episode of the series here, I essentially I'm explaining to a random redditor about this latent space, the world that we're able to see within AI imagery, and I have a lot of fun with it. I like even bring up Daria. You know what I mean? Like I was a big Daria kid growing up, so I love Daria. So Six Sad World has to be in this. But there's the line here. This is the last stage of grief for my craft. Is that this comic is literally me going through the 5 stages, and I'm trying to emphasize a sense of inevitability with this industry taking advantage of new tools because of money. You know what I mean? Because our world right now works with whoever can get it done for the bottom dollar gets it done. And you can't get cheaper than generated tech when it comes to content creation. So that's kind of where I'm going with that. But on the last stream, I went through my tutorial demo, and you can see the animated bits here, which again, all of this is generated imagery, and it's all based off of this initial turnaround that's here in terms of the demo here. So if you really want to see the kind of stuff that that I make, you can always go to my website here down here and get a closer look at it. But this is where I realized this is where I started that 5 stages of grief. Honestly, was this animated sequence here. I should not have been able to make this.
Incredible.
This animated sequence here is the corporeal continuity that I was doing earlier with the redhead here. Essentially, what I was able to accomplish with corporeal continuity. The background's always the same, right? On all these. So the only thing I had to do was basically outline the character here, and that was one pose, and then outline the character on another prompt. Then I have that. You can see here the character kind of looks like it's taking it's like a step here and then a step forward. I just combine the two for framing. So with this here, it's the same thing. It's just me going frame by frame by frame, eventually creating an animated sequence with that. The tutorial kind of goes through the latter half of it, goes through the actual technical side of it, like all the After Effects things you have to do to properly mask and color balance or color correct this. Because that is the one thing you will not get, which is the color or hues or luminances values are going to be kind of all over the place. So most of the work is training folks how to use certain lumetry settings like curves and other color correction, replace color, that kind of thing. That's all that all has to be done currently, but I think that we're going to end up here with the technology to the point where we don't need to do that anymore. My use of After Effects will get less and less important as we keep going, but everything else in the tutorial is pretty essential. So I'm just going to quickly actually emphasize this here real quick. You can see that because of the GIF, it's lowered the resolution a little bit, right? But it still shows the overall movement that I intended on here. And the background that's there is from a single prompt, like one of the results that I got here, and then I just used the 3D camera inside After Effects to make it match how I thought the animation would look. So, but after I made this animated sequence and started sending it to my friends and sending it to the people I work in the industry with, I started getting like shutouts. Like people stopped talking to me and stuff like that because they were honestly afraid of what this little animated GIF meant. I had folks that like, you know, I'm not going to name any alphabet soup 3-letter names or three-letter companies here, but I kind of caused a bit of a storm of problems for folks because I kept sharing this out to like industry people, and you know, they were like, wait a minute, you can really do this? And I'm like, yeah. And I have never accepted any money for my generative stuff. I'll accept money for teaching people. I'll accept money for getting people like this into the hands, but I refuse to charge money for access to my stuff. It's just because I think we're in such a kind of a weird, murky spot with this tech that I choose not to do that. Right? It's interpolation, right? Actually, no. There's no frame interpolation on that at all. And the reason why is because I didn't want details to blend. I didn't want things to merge together. This is all just assets. Like I basically prompted her, and if you're familiar with a cartoon called Home Movies on Adult Swim, Kinky, are you familiar?
Yes, I got a cable, but I wish that I still had that.
Yeah, Coach McGurk and all that kind of stuff is still some of my favorite characters in cartoon history. But the thing is that they use something called wiggles, and you can notice, and it's kind of hard to see, but let me zoom in here. She actually has the same wiggle function that's used in Home Movies on the edging here, and that's to make her look like kind of like timid or nervous. I could have done more to emphasize this. I could have put a teardrop going down the side of her face or something, but I wanted to utilize at least a little bit of After Effects to kind of make this a little more dynamic. But the prompt of the of the nun is mostly unaltered. I just created a second variation of that, and then use that to cover her hand with, and that's all just done with masking. Same thing with this one here, where these are 1, 2, 3. I'm counting the prompts. There's 3 different prompts that are here, and there's actually a continuity failure with this exact panel here. She is way too old inside of this one here, but I got the freaking idiot hair to pop up like that, and I was so happy with the results of that, I just decided to keep it. And so even though in just the panel beforehand she's a child, you know what I mean, like she's a preteen or whatever age, she jumps to an adult temporarily when she gets spooked by the gong of the church bells. So because the action is so fast and like dramatic and stuff, most people didn't notice that. They also didn't really notice that the nun is much younger at the end panel here. And that's mostly because I just wanted her frumpy. But the hardest thing for me to get Midjourney to do for me at the time, or at least I think even now, is just getting the nuns to look like old ladies, because they kept making them really hot.
And it doesn't look like a supermodel quality.
Supermodel, yeah. And a lot of that stuff for me anyway came down to just re-rolling, and when I started using prompts like grotesque or whatever, I just got too many zombies. I got like zombie nuns is a fun idea, but I just
one that looks like I could walk into them at a coffee shop.
Right. But so it helps a lot to use image injection for that, but you also run the risk of deep faking somebody at that point. You know what I mean? Like if I'm going to say like you know, and any like let's just do Tom Hanks here. If I inject Tom Hanks into my prompts, I suddenly have Tom Hanks in my prompts. You know what I mean? And that's not really my intention, is to use like actors as actors. I would much rather create my own characters.
One thing that is actually really, really generous when it comes to giving to nondescript people. Is this is not a this person does not exist.com. So you can get a person that doesn't exist. He's not, you're not taking
Oh,
money
that's a
from him.
good idea. That's a
Yeah.
good idea.
That's a great image prompt uh, resource. Every time you hit reload, you get a fresh new face that doesn't exist.
Right, right. And that can be helpful if you're, especially if you're looking to commercialize the stuff that you make, right?
Yeah.
You don't want to, you do not, I'm telling you guys right now, you do not want to get into the nastiness that is using someone else's identity. Like it's just it's something that I am actually strongly against. I really don't like using real people in my stuff, and it just comes down to the fact that they have no control over what you do with it, you know.
Zendaya's likeness, I believe, when she made her first Midjourney comic or AI comic, and I mean, like it's even legal. They'll mess with you. You don't want to use other people.
Yeah, well, because there's already laws in the books about that, you know what I mean? Like when folks go like, oh, this is going to, they're going to have to write whole new laws. I'm like, no, there's already laws against revenge porn and all sorts of other nasty stuff that's on the internet.
Your likeness
um
is your intellectual property.
Right, right. And I do admit that some of my comic kind of challenges intellectual property like directly, but like it's not meant to be like this, like, at least for me, I'm very keen on making my own stuff, like my own characters, and when I do pay homage or critique, I'm doing so with extreme intent. I very much do not want to get into that nastiness. Let's get into this black box here real quick. So this is everyone's submissions, and the I'm sorry, I'm completely distracted by the fact that AC just sent this foot does not exist. But I did want to show you guys what results we got from the black box here. So we went through some of these last time, but I mostly wanted to show you all every one of them line by line here, and then we will kind of start image injecting with some of these here. Some of them are like really cool. Like I really dig some of the compositions of these. There's definitely ways that we can make usable turnarounds out of these, and they can be just as simple as isolating it from the background. But this character, I like this one a lot.
Whose design is that?
This one is Ancient Chaos, actually. I
I
think.
figured.
Yeah, I'll mess around with that one a little bit. That sounds fun. This one is a full character turnaround. Like this one is completely usable. I probably would avoid this one just because the single foot is going to make other prompts in the future have single foot. You want to kind of rely on the prompting to give action to the character. So we'll probably mess with this one because it's one of the most complete. What were you saying?
What if they want him to be a pogo stick man?
I know, right? Yeah, like just have him a one-footed, one-legged person, and like when the reason I'm going to avoid some of the realism ones here is just because of what happened on the last stream, where the realism stuff gets wild, in terms of ethnicities and all that kind of stuff, and it's hard to sometimes maintain some continuity on that, but it's totally possible. But these ones here are really cool. I really do like seeing more African American people in prompts. There is a kind of a bias within AI imagery, especially towards white people. So it's whenever I see ethnicity in the prompts, I'm all for it. So we have some like classic Americana painter styles and stuff in here as well. And this one here, I think is actually quite fun because we can kind of take advantage of some of these halo effects and stuff, and kind of get into it. So that'll be a bit silly here. We went into this one last time. This one was us trying to make a Pixar like 3D film, and it was a bit haphazard, honestly. It all just came down to the fact that I was trying to do a really action involved prompt, and it wasn't the most best results I got out of that. But this one, however, I think is actually quite fun. The only issue with this, okay, is the fact that the turnarounds here don't vary enough. So we have a lot of convolution between the legs. It's going to merge these legs a lot. You really do want the legs to be splayed out, like how it is on. Just kind of double back here real quick. You really want the prompts to where the legs are clearly defined. because when they, unless it's the profile picture is the one exception I would say to that. Every day is Catboy Day. Yep, it is. So when it comes to this prompt in particular here, like they did include a couple extras, right? But ideally, we want to get a lot more diversity out of the outfit here, and we might be able to force that just by starting with one and then moving to another. I don't really know what's in their hand. I know it's like an orb, and like orbs are real hot right now. Everyone's got to have their orb. But the thing is that it's what this is going to do is it's going to confuse the heck out of the results to put these kind of props in there and stuff. So we also went through this one. I think I'm going to explore this one as well today because we have the tail that I really want to see some non-humanoid fantasy elements, and we did have the avant-garde request, so fantasy avant-garde. So I'll probably end up using this character as the avant-garde deep dive. And then we have some almost like, this is like the live action. The Neon Flux is a amazing animated series, absolutely amazing animated series. I will say, whenever I'm, whenever I'm kind of digging into this stuff, I try to look for the things I know that's going to repeat well, and like this zipper is going to repeat well because it has such high contrast between what surrounds it and stuff. So little details like that are going to be pretty cool. And we have another one here of the kind of cyberpunk aesthetic. Again, I would 100% isolate the character from the background, and without getting into a bunch of Photoshop stuff. That we'll get into there. And then last time we did this as our live action demo. We do have this robot character who was spoken on our on my Discord. They had a lot of trouble creating accurate turnarounds for this character. And I'll say this about robotic characters. Because of the kind of scrap heap metal sort of aesthetic, it's really tough to get the plating to be consistent, to get certain aspects of this, because it in terms of like, the prompt itself, it's going to kind of do whatever when it comes to saying, hey, it's a scrap metal robot. What scrap metal? Is it scrap metal parts of an airplane? Is it scrap metal parts of like what is it? And it's really hard to kind of get into the descriptive elements of this. So this might be where we push it too far. Maybe we'll see what comes up, but yeah, we'll see what happens. And I'm gonna actually finish the black box review here, and then I'll get into the comments here. We also have the redhead character as a kind of like an Americana cutout, right? So that's cool. And then here from Megan, I really like this character. There is an anime that's currently on Netflix called The Ways of the House Husband, and this is essentially the wife, the girlfriend from Ways of the House Husband. Almost like on point actually, but I just really like some of the sass that's inside of this. This is pretty fun. I like the aggression. It kind of has a little bit of like, I'm not a big fan of this term, but like girl bossiness to it, right? I do like it. I do like it a lot though. Yeah, and we even get the different expressions here. So we, like this is just by doing variations, you can see that they were able to get different kind of expressions. There's almost no girl bossiness at all from this one, and that's all boiling down to like these emotional kind of responses. And now this one here from Mike Keen, I'm gonna tell you right now that I'm gonna inject into this because I believe you drew this. If you drew this, you are much more likely to get me to mess with your stuff inside the black box. So we will get into that too. And then we have this little girl character, this expansion of this. It's pretty cool, but there's a lot of isolating that we're going to have to do. Look at just the hair combination here. And what we can do at Photoshop Beta is just do some inpainting of what's missing of her hair here. But that's going to take a lot of feathering, a lot of cleanup to do. So I'm going to avoid this one for now. But it's here. It's in the black box. We can always pull it up later. And then, yep, I drew it with pencil, colored digitally. Hey! You're here. That's awesome. Let me just hop over to the Discord chat here real quick. That is awesome, John. I'm happy that you drew something and put it in the black box because that is probably going to be the most rare result that we're gonna get. Is folks going like, yeah, what does my hand drawn stuff look like when you take it through your bizarro workflow of image injection and stuff. Because you're here, I'm just gonna start with you. I think that sounds a lot more fun. Um, so let's go ahead and download this really quick. While I'm downloading, I'm gonna read the comments here. Do you alter the images, increase contrast in order to make details like the zipper pop out more? Yes. So sometimes I will manipulate the images before injecting them when it comes to like certain details. Most often with Victor, I'm changing his cheekbones and sometimes his hair. Just because like there's a certain level of like wacky wild hair that I go for, and it's all based off my teenage self insert that I drew when I was reading too many Jonan Vasquez comics and stuff like that. So, um, yeah, I will definitely manipulate images before I inject them in there in order to get exactly what I want. Most of the character continuity issues that you would run into can be fixed before you even inject them. Like just go ahead and make the turnarounds look right, and then you'll do a lot better. And I know that's asking a lot for like a lot of people who don't have a drawing tablet, that don't have all the tools necessary to make this stuff, which is why I try to make the tutorial as injectable or generated as possible. So that you know that you don't have to do that, right? You don't have to go out there and buy a $300 plus tablet just to make hand drawn corrections. But with that said, I am all more often using the mouse. You know what I mean? Just to kind of do a quick little cleanup and stuff. But now that we have your thing downloaded here, I am going to jump ahead to our to here, and then I am going to run a describe on it. This is not going to tell us too much useful info, honestly. The reason why is because it's mostly going to look at the style. It's not really going to look at in the context of it. So it's going to be like a boy on a rocket ship, that kind of thing. And we're not going to make a turnaround, I guess, of necessarily this character, but we might be able to see the character in different context here. So we have I also based my entire person around Johnny and Sid Vicious for a while. Yeah. I feel like Kinky and I kind of have similar like teenagers. I was a huge mall goth kid. Like I literally would hang out at the mall. Like it's so it's so funny talking to Gen Zers about this, because like they're like, what's a mall? Like it's like and I'm being a little condescending there, but it's true. Like kids don't do that stuff anymore. They don't do the stuff we did when we were younger. Um, yeah, mall rats. Yeah, I feel like I invite mall rats into the stream just because of how my character looks and all that stuff. Um, oh God, no God, I have too much cringe to unload if we talk about mall rat stories. But I would have been, but both malls and goths were too expensive. Yeah. Especially like Hot Topic stuff and whatnot. Yeah, that was like, oh God, we were being purged of all of our money through crappy little keychains and stuff like that. My husband was a gamer who wore black trench coat and hang out at the mall. There was a gaming store where you could play TTRPGs. Yeah, okay. I was never a trench coat kid. I was never one of I was never one of those kids. It was after Columbine and stuff when I was in high school. So I was like, okay, no, I'm not going to be one of those kids. But like, I was very aware of, I was more like a skinny jeans kid. Like I wore a lot of like tight fitting stuff. That's also why Victor is very lanky and very like like tight to the pants and stuff like that, was just because that was me as a teen. Like I was wearing pants that were like all women's pants, just because I wanted that look. Anyway, I'm not even talking about gender stuff anymore. But I want to take your image here, and let's go ahead and start a blend first. And we could hit the Imagine All button. I mean, why not? I have turbo mode on. Let's do it. I'll just hit Imagine All. Imagine All is going to literally just take the words and then run them as a prompt here. The only reason I don't like doing Imagine All is that it includes a lot of these artist names that are here. And I personally, I'm not going to blame you if you do that, guys, at all. But I personally don't. I choose not to include artist names inside of my prompts. And that's just because I really don't want to make derivative stuff. But if you look here, oh, sorry, everything I make is derivative, but I don't want to make stuff that's so clearly derivative of one particular person. So look at that. Let me actually zoom in here real quick. Here. Yeah. Just off of that one image description, we got the boy. We got all the, character. It's just not the same character. It's just a boy zooming through space and all that stuff. And that prompt was drawing of an alien in a spaceship in a style of Outrun, Alex Hirsch, Jeff Kinney, HD Mod, Babycore, and Lit Kid and Colorized. Okay, so let me kind of get into this a little bit here because there is some important stuff to kind of pull out of this. From the prompt here, particularly Babycore and Lit Kid, particularly Lit Kid, I have used a lot. And the reason why is because this is kind of what I describe an egregore as, is that these phrases, these little I have a suspicion, and feel free to correct me on this, AC, or anyone else that is actually knowledgeable of this stuff. But I have a feeling that this is based off of fandoms. It's based off of all the funny little things that we call our fan art or amateur art. This is all those words just kind of smothered together. So a lot of the fandoms are meant to be, at least how I see them, is that they're deduced. It's like these phrases of, whenever I would submit art to DeviantArt back when I was like a teenager and stuff, I would include a bunch of random phrases that I thought would be applicable in my tags and stuff like that. That sort of metadata, I think, is what birthed a lot of these Babycore Lit Kid kind of stuff, where it's almost like music, right? Where you have all sorts of little subgenres of music that people just make up out of nowhere. I've talked to some metalhead kids who I feel like they have like 16 different genres of metal that I've never heard of before, and maybe that's what it is. You know what I mean? I kind of look at it like that. So I don't know how right or wrong that is.
You're not wrong fully. Those ones mostly come from the aesthetics wiki.
So aesthetics wiki, interesting.
Yeah. But the metal genre thing made me laugh because I have a very well categorized library of metal music, and some of them are quite absurd.
Oh man, I realize that I'm in like a circle of people who are like very, very close to me. Like, in terms of like genre, in terms of just the things we're interested in and stuff. It's just super cool that you have a metal like library and stuff, because we gotta be trading some music here soon then. I'm a big fan of all sorts of really noisy punk metal kind of stuff. Like any kind of in between on that stuff is the stuff I dig. But I a lot of electronic music was because I grew up partially in Europe, and the combination of metal and electronica and all that stuff is just it's so up my alley in terms of like how raw it is sometimes, especially when it's got a little bit of grindiness to it. But I won't be playing any of that stuff here for y'all. That's a little too not exactly wide audience friendly. But what I mostly wanted to go through here was the fact that there is all these little phrases like Babycore, Lit Kid, all that kind of stuff. We can actually use that when we are doing when we're doing the prompting of our art here. So I'm gonna go ahead and let's just include. We have the URL already for the original art. I'm going to just start taking some of these aesthetic things here. I'm not going to take things that will completely change. Like, for example, Bryce 3D. Most of the kids will not know what that is. Will not know what Bryce 3D is. Essentially, the vaporwave aesthetic was established by Bryce 3D. That was just like that's what the technology was capable of doing back then in the 90s and stuff. And it was from a program called Bryce 3D. And so I'm not going to include that because I'm knowledgeable of what that is, and it's not really going to give us anything from the kid stuff. This though was the closest in terms of like the art style and such. So I'm going to put these ones a little bit ahead of the others. So we have lit kid, baby core, that kind of thing. Carpet, carpet punk. Okay, carpet punk. Um, and I'm just kind of arbitrarily grabbing random ones, guys. There's no like, mommy's on the phone core. What? Mommy's on the phone core. Like where did that come? Like, I'm curious. I'm just gonna add that. Why not? And we have digital airbrushing again. Kid core comes back up, and kid core will, anytime you see this like little child kind of like Jimmy Neutron sort of stuff, kid core will come up a lot. And so we have all these different ones here. I'm not really going to worry about any of them. Tempura. But I'm going to just go ahead and run this. This is a blend. Okay. So we're just putting the image in there with the image, with the words. I prefer doing image injection, but that's only after I know the results I get. So, all right, this should be fun. We have a lot of we can learn some things from this. I don't know how much we can learn from it, but there is something going on here. Okay, all right. So we definitely pulled the kids sitting in something, but we have all sorts of random information that's kind of coming into here, and it's definitely hard to decipher, right? I mostly wanted to show this to you all to be like, don't get discouraged just because /describe gives you something that gives you nonsense afterward, but it does let me know essentially what sort of at least what sort of control we can obtain out of this. So we definitely have just like a messy room and all sorts of other stuff here. So I'm gonna use my monkey brain here, and I'm gonna actually describe this without describe and just say flying on a spaceship, flying in space, spaceship, and then we'll just do like children's book as the art style there. And I'm gonna run this as a just got McDonald punk on a prompt. Yes. There's a couple of like funny like corpo words that kind of come up every once in a while. So that's fun. But I mostly wanted to show that boom, we have our kid on a spaceship just by writing that there. We can kind of pick the one that we feel like is close enough. I think this bottom left one here. Just keep re-rolling. Keep re-rolling your word only prompts until you get what you want. But we're gonna come into here, grab the URL from here, and let's go ahead and just actually image inject into both of these here. I always upres so that I can get both my variation subtle and variation strong on here. But let me go ahead and hit subtle and then paste the URL. Strong, paste the URL. Same thing up here. Subtle and strong. Every time we're injecting into here, we are essentially going to try to force certain details of this to change. There's unlike a blend, the results that we kind of get out of this can tend to be a lot more continuous. Like we're able to say, hey, let's keep this continuous by using word only prompts. But if we then inject into the results of this, right? Like that's the only thing I did here was say, hey, give me a strong or a so let's go ahead and kind of open some of these up here. So this was a variation, I believe, strong. It doesn't actually tell me what kind of variation I used here. It does when it's rendering, but it doesn't tell me when it's done. That would be kind of nice. But the thing is that the subtles, if you look at the variation subtle, look at that. The composition is almost exactly the same on all, like the forms of the ship is, but the details are all different. They're kind of all over the place, right? And we can compare it to the original image and get an idea of which one is the closest, but none of these ships are right. None of the the characters' heads right. So we need to start describing this character more detailed. But I definitely want to show you all out of this though, because what we're essentially doing is doing a prop turnaround, where the turnaround includes the prop that you're using. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. So character turnaround. And this is going to be really weird. I have never actually done it with like the lower half of being an entirely mechanical thing. Young boy sitting in white spaceship. I'm just going to see what that kind of gives us right off the bat, and we can kind of take it for a second. It's really hard to get some element of continuity when it comes to the ship itself, so you can actually compartmentalize that too. So like you can essentially start with the ship and then pan up to create the character. And we might do that. We might have to do that, but I think it's probably best to start with just a selection of the character itself, build a turnaround from that, and then throw them in a white spaceship. I think that's probably the best solution for making this usable in that way. For the sake of demonstration, though, let's see if I'm able to at least force a spaceship on in this kit here. So now that we know the results are at least reliable, I can come into here and see if I'm able to throw the URL in there and do a blend and see if we're able to get something that's, usable. This one's kind of close, but it's definitely not there. It's not the classic, spaceship that we imagine. And I'm definitely getting a lot of negative with doing a blend here. So I'm going to try this instead. We are going to bring this image into Photoshop or any image manipulator. I'm just going to marquee just the character here. And instead of running a describe on the whole image, we're going to describe only partially the image, just so I can see if we get anything that can, get me into the different aesthetics and stuff. Yeah, drawing a little boy with a racing helmet on. Okay, yes. So even just racing helmet is helpful for me because now I know. Oh yeah, that's what the stripe in the middle represents, is that it's like a race car, right? So we can already start to add a list of descriptions here. So racing helmet, meat punk. That's fun. The loose line work is describing the actual art, so we'll avoid that for now. And we'll put the word cartoon in front of it, because that's actually what I missed last time. Child driving a car with his helmet on. Okay, nah, not gonna worry about that. Coral punk, Nintendo core. Some of these just make me laugh, y'all. Honestly, like the slash describe is like, there's a lot of entertainment for me that comes out of this. But I mostly wanted to see which ones come up the most, and Nintendo core tends to come up a couple times here. So we might inject that in there. Yeah, we'll do that in a bit here. So racing helmet, boy, brunette, purple shirt, and then I'll come back to the helmet and hit yellow, racing helmet, purple shirt, and we'll just kind of see what we get out of that. After we kind of delve into some of these, I want to make one where we can actually start to expand on it and make the comics with them, right? So look at that. So we have, I would say this is probably the closest, and it's pulling the purple from the purple shirt in the prompt, right? Rather resistant to giving me purple shirts. I wonder why that is. But there's we got a couple purple shirts here, that kind of thing. But we can always correct that later in an image. Finding the balance between if I generate it or if I if I fix it manually will be a learning curve for anyone that's getting into this stuff. You'll find that manual correction saves you a lot of headache when it comes to re-rolling or deep diving into some of this stuff. But at the same time, you really do want to have the most control you can off of your generated images. So we didn't get the stripe, right? But we at least got the yellow helmet, which is cool. And now I'm going to take the URL from let's actually make a new URL because I want a close-up of the character here. So, and this is going to start merging art styles a little bit, but I will grab the marquee here, paste that into Discord, like so. And this will let me be able to now use this as an image injection. So now I will hit very strong. and then very subtle. And that will let us be able to start to bring certain elements of the hand-drawn art into this character here. You'll notice that the very strong will give us much more diversity, but the very subtle will start to, at least in my opinion, let us compare here. So let's drag that over here. Okay. So we have a bit more of the, I would say, like kind of the characters, and I'll do a side by side so you guys can see. So I'm going to zoom out on this one here. And then we are going to take a closer look at some of these here. Essentially, what we're trying to look for is little like characters, like the hair on the right one here, like the bottom left is the most accurate to like the hair floof that kind of sticks up on the character here. So let's go ahead and upres that. Let's go ahead and now do a pan down. But this time, because we have remix mode on, right? I'm able to come into here and say, let's see, spaceship, and I'm actually going to take out the reference art entirely. I'm going to do white spaceship. If we just say rocket, just because the spaceship can be anything from like a disc to like whatever. So like, I'm going to just add rocket in there, and then we'll run this as is just to see what we get. But I want to show you guys how we're going to now merge or mix image injections. So I'll come into here, and we are now going to marquee not the boy, but we're going to marquee the ship. And I can actually do this just by boop, 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 highlight selecting all of this. Make sure I do not include the boy. But what I want to do here is I want to just select the ship here. And if I really wanted to have no influence from the background here, I could go in and manually remove like the actual background here. So we can just kind of come like that. Boom. There you go. So now I just have the ship selected. I can now copy that, jump over to Discord here, paste that, and now we have the ship. Now, granted, the ship is a white on white sort of thing, right? So we might have to change the color of the ship for it to be more easily seen. But I'm going to go ahead and copy this over, and we might even try doing like a PNG instead of just copying and pasting, so I can show you guys the difference in that. Actually, you know what? Let's just do that first, because I really do want to show you guys what that looks like, since there is a lot of like, I would say like novices and stuff that are going to be watching the stream. A PNG also includes what is called an alpha channel, which is an invisible like nothing layer, or nothing. There's no pixels there. So instead of being white or black, it is nothing. So what we can do is essentially copy and paste this inside of Photoshop or any photo manipulator that you have, and then we just turn off the background image. And you can see it creates this checker pattern all through here. That's the alpha channel. That is basically saying, oh, there's nothing here. So now I can just save this out as a PNG, and we can even crop it down a little bit just to kind of keep the image a little more constrained to what we want. But I want to come into here and show you all what a alpha channel looks like in Discord. Okay, so right now we have no alpha channel; it is just white. But if I now come to my computer here, and then grab the PNG that we exported from Photoshop, and then I hit enter, now it has an alpha channel. Now it has a like there's nothing there, right? It's just a nice clean outline that we have. We are going to inject both of them and show you what the results of those look like. Okay, so let's go into here, grab both of those links, and I will do pan down again. And then I am going to first grab the one without an alpha channel, and I'll just describe it as a white spaceship rocket. And we'll just let that go. And then same thing with this. Again, I'm going to do pan down once more. And this time I'm going to grab the alpha channel one. Again, replace it with spaceship rocket. White spaceship. White, or just white rocket spaceship, I guess. I forgot exactly the word order that I used in the last one. Doesn't really matter right now, for the sake of demonstration anyway. Word order does matter a lot when it comes to like taking control of this stuff. But and you'll notice too that if the more URLs, I've noticed that Midjourney kind of takes an extra second to kind of figure out what the heck what the heck you want to do. but we're just gonna let this render here and start to see what we get out of that. My suspicion is that it won't matter at all. It matters because we're so close to white on the spaceship itself, for the sake of this image injection. But usually, the having a bunch of white around it doesn't really hurt your injections.
So in general, the alpha channel is treated as black, but there are some weird cases that I can't go into detail on. We've found some very weird behaviors with it that I don't know if anyone in the community has found.
I am fascinated, but yes, no, I understand.
It can do some weird stuff.
Yeah, I
Getting
try
up
to
there.
avoid alpha channels for that reason. Like, the weirdness just it accelerates when you start to like, I don't know. I think it has to do with the fact that if it is turning it into black, right? It could be seeing it as a bunch of negative space in terms of like shadow and darkness and all that kind of stuff. So I don't know, but it is fascinating to me. But I do want to show you guys what sort of results we got out of this, because we're getting really close just off of these two here. We have the boy sitting on a white ship-like shape here. And same with this, But again, we're going to have a lot of trouble with it trying to make these images work, right? In terms of like, look, the image we're injecting is not the right size for the boy. The boy is huge in the image, but the ship that we injected is the full size ship.
Like the way it almost implies that he got one of his toys to work.
Right. But what we can do is actually encourage this. But I need to go over the PNG version first. So in terms of the version with the PNGs, look, it made no difference whatsoever. This is why I tell people just to copy and paste from Photoshop or MS Paint or whatever you're using, because it just doesn't matter. It just doesn't. The quote unquote AI is smart enough to recognize there's a difference there. There's something outlined there, whatever. It's not actually smart. I really hate using personified language related to AI imagery, but sometimes it just makes it easier to explain. So we have a way to fix this though, and it's by selectively image injecting. We can now come in and go back up to our original prompt that we had here. I'm going to open up Photoshop here real quick. And now, because we were using the whole ship before, we're going to now do a segmenting of this image. So I'm going to marquee just this. This may sound a little weird, and there's really not a lot of information there. But if you notice, what I'm doing is I'm essentially highlighting the box that's going to be right below where this child is, where this child's sitting. And with the same descriptions, we should be able to essentially say, hey, this is the cockpit of a spaceship. Okay, I'll just copy and paste this here, paste that into there. And you notice this doesn't really tell us anything. Like this, you would think this is like nothing. Like there's no value to that at all. But what it's doing is it's giving us a little bit of like shading, a little bit of contours, a little bit of whatever, to at least give us some direction towards the image we want to make. And we could like invert this image so that it's like it's left to right, because the character is not facing the correct direction anymore. He's facing the opposite way. But we can come into here, grab that URL, and then we're just going to do a injection of that with the pan. So we'll pan down, paste the image, white rocket spaceship, cockpit. And we might have to not include the wording spaceship or whatever, cockpit for a spaceship. Just anything that might get us a little closer without evoking the entire spaceship. Okay, cool. We're getting the results I wanted. So we can see here that, yes, look at that. Look at that. The kid is actually holding on to the edge of the ship here. Okay. Depending on how we move around with the pans, we might be able to dictate more. So let's do the first one. Yeah, and I was looking at the second one here. The writing a cockpit didn't really seem to indicate as much as I wanted. It's kind of like he's controlling the ship here with a big old touchpad. That's not what we want. We want this. We want him sitting on this thing, right? I'm going to grab the image of the whole spaceship here, and we're going to copy that URL, copy link, come back down to here, custom zoom, leave it on 2 so that it zooms out as far as it's going to zoom out, and then we're going to replace this with this URL with the image of the ship itself. grab the proper URL. There we go. It has to say, it doesn't have to, but it's best to say an extension at the end of it. If you do not see .png or .jpg at the end of your link, there's a chance that it's going to fail because it's like a WebMD or whatever, WebP or whatever that awful extension is. Yeah, right. Yeah, don't inject your virtual doctor into Midjourney. They won't like it. So let's do white rocket spaceship. Remove the word cockpit because we don't need it anymore. And now, because we're zooming out as far as we can either leave it as a square or, better yet, let's do 3:2. And that's going to make it a little bit more like what the original image is. The closer we get to the aspect ratio of what we're injecting, the more likely we get results we like. If I am injecting into a character sheet, if I use aspect ratio 3:2 or 2:3, it's going to look like a piece of paper. It's going to be far more likely to be much closer to what we want. Yeah, this is working. I'll tell you all right now. I'm going to jump over here real quick. I'm going to tell you all right now. I've done this stuff. Like, I'm almost like 50,000 generations in. I am still flabbergasted by the results that I get. Just because of just because it's like, I feel like I can control this a little bit, that it gives me like, I don't know. It just gets me like a real raw excitement off of this. So let's go ahead and look at some of these a bit closer here. It's not perfect, obviously. It's not gonna be, but it is a kid sitting on a spaceship, zooming about in space. And you can compare that to the original image here. I can come into here and like remove the bump, the orange bump that's on the front or whatever it is for this. But let's go ahead and actually re-roll that a couple times just to see what we get. We might be able to get really, really darn close with this alone. Now, keep in mind, the ship is facing the wrong direction in my image injection. It's still able to figure out based on context that the kid should be facing a certain way. But we might get better results by flipping the image now because of the direction of injection here. Yeah. I'll just say this right now. We're very, very close to where if you just simply kept re-rolling this, you would be able to essentially be able to build a starting image that is fully latently, like what I call latently compatible. It's completely like the images that we inject come from Midjourney, so we know that they're in there. And then we can, or like that they can be evoked from there, and we can essentially use that information. This is why Victor's turnarounds, by the way, are half generated and half real. Like half sketches, because the generated ones pull more often from spaces that I've confirmed that I know is what I want, and then the other half of them are sketches that I am that essentially is giving my own personal style to it. So. Yeah, I'll oftentimes recommend that even if you're a traditional artist, you're probably going to get more reliable results by running your original art through Midjourney, telling it to make turnarounds of your art, and then use those turnarounds just to get started, just to get your character moving around in the space, and then you can reintroduce your own hand-drawn art again. At this point, though, we do have the ship looking all sorts of weird and wonky in terms of the perspective. Like there's like sometimes the ship's pointing away halfway, like it's all really weird when it comes to that. So let's actually correct our image injection. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to reverse this image. So we'll do image adjustments. Transform, flip horizontally. Okay. And because we know the boy is not like leaning forward, right. he's kind of more upright, then what I can do is actually take the spaceship here and just rotate that to kind of be in line with how he's sitting. Okay. And now I am going to marquee select the ship here. And we are going to paste this. We're going to make a new URL using the now reverse spaceship. Okay. So I will grab the URL here, and then we'll come back up to here, and now do that same custom zoom that we did earlier. So I'll replace this, remove the word cockpit, and just because we were getting good results out of that aspect ratio, I'm going to keep that one as well. But this is the true power of zoom, in my opinion. I think that it helps that it's using camera terminology like panning and zooming and stuff like that, because it really lets you know where we're going with this stuff. You know what I mean? Like I really do think we're going to be making movies here, not too long from now. Yeah, well, I mean that's the whole reason I named my my production company movie machine. You know what I mean? Like it's not even a real company. It's just a tag that I expect people to use whenever we make films together. Look at this. Okay, I'm gonna upres this one here, and then I'll also rerun this one a couple times. I have to keep using the reroll here because it's yeah. There's a couple issues with repeat on subsequent prompting, which we ran into on the last stream. But I want to show first of all, look how close we're getting here. You know what I mean? In terms of like the orientation of the ship and all that stuff, it's still facing the wrong way, but at least the orientation of the ship is much more in line with what we had before, and it's even starting to replicate some of the like some of the art style a little bit, right? Where it's a little rough. But I'm just gonna, essentially at this point, you could just keep re-rolling until you get the results that you want. But I personally just like to get about 90 or 80% there, and then fix the rest of it by hand. But if you don't have those skills, if you don't have that ability, just keep re-rolling and hope for the best. You'll find very quickly that you're actually going to gain skills by doing this stuff. This is probably the biggest misunderstanding I've seen within the creative circles, that it's a cheat code. And yes, it's a cheat code to creating content, but it's not a cheat code for having artistic vision at all. In fact, you can tell when people have no vision and they try to like make a story and stuff. It just feels very flat. It feels very like uninspired, or otherwise very, I'm going to be frank, boring. Because there isn't a grand purpose or intent behind it, right? You're not like trying to change the world, at least a little bit. While a lot of the stuff I kind of put out there, I'm trying to like actively, affect things. I'm trying to actively move the needle in certain ways.
You have to have a certain level of talent artistically to use the verbiage that it takes to create an image.
Yeah. I mean, even with prompting, for sure. Like if you don't have a bank of like film terminology in the back of your head, you're not going to make really dynamic shots. You know what I mean? Or at least have control of those dynamic shots. You may get one in a blue moon, very cool Dutch shot that you weren't expecting, and you're like, yeah, I made something cool. But the reality is that you're far more likely to get the results you want with knowledge and experience. Like, if it wasn't for my 7-8 years working in entertainment, I would not have gained most of my filmmaking experiences.
Terminology wikis come into play. Like there
Right.
are all sorts of reference guides, but like it's more impressive to watch people learn this stuff on the fly. Honestly, to me, it's like, wow, you figured all that out. Well, I was looking at the different things on the reference page.
This is what I meant by, I think that it's actually something that gives people skills, because it's something that you're going to just keep absorbing more stuff, and because you're getting these instant results, you're never demotivated from learning. Like it's this is why I'm partially like so eager to get more of my creative folks involved with this stuff, is just because you really do see an influence that happens in regular people, where suddenly they want to become filmmakers, suddenly they want to become comic artists or something, whatever, and they might lean very heavily on using generated tech to do that. But what they're learning along the way, it's all about the journey, right? What they're learning about along the way is real. It's not fake. It's not this like like they know what a wide angle lens is now, and they didn't know what that was before, because they were trying to like go like, I want it to look like a GoPro, like, and they keep writing GoPros, and they kept getting, yeah, sorry,
photography knowledge. Like you want to start taking pictures now because you're like, wow, I really love like the way photography works. What do I know about photography? Well, I learned most of it from Midjourney, but now I know that like what panning and zooming is going to do, or anything like that, or like what kind of results this kind of camera produces, and it's kind of beautiful even in the reverse.
It would be really funny to like, actually really fun for me. I don't know how well this would work, because I know that the pan and zoom functions are just kind of like, let's just say like simplifications of what's actually happening. But like, I would love to see different camera movements inside of Midjourney. Like, I would love to see a dolly button that just lets me do something different than like right now, technically what's happening with pan is that it's dolly. That's the pan is not actually like, yes, you're panning left, panning right, but when you're talking about film terminology, you're dolly. You use a dolly to move in, move out, move whatever. So I would love to be able to say like dolly in or dolly up, and that basically lets us be able to say like, okay, not only are we zooming in, but the perspective is also changing with that. That's gonna get into mind melting levels of detail for me, but we won't get into the hypothetical too much. If anyone's got any questions or anything like that, I'm going to be looking at the chat here for a minute as I sip on my coffee here. I'm more than happy to kind of answer any questions you guys might have. Just because it's on my little banner there, I am a former visual effects artist for Robot Chicken and a couple other Adult Swim shows. I was very fortunate being young and in the industry that which is partly also why like I can sometimes feel a lot of guilt about my early success and stuff, is just because I watched so many people who were around me not do well, and it all just came down to the fact that like right place, right time, and I had the spare income necessary. Like I had the support from family to keep me there long enough until that job came in. So at least during my time working there, I had a lot of that was my most formative years in entertainment. Let's see here. MJ is great for non-artists, but even better for artists, photographers, designers, etc. It's a shame that there is so much negativity around AI. Yes, fully. I fully agree with that. I mean, it comes down a lot to people being reactive, emotionally reactive. I'm not a big fan of the idea of calling anybody a Luddite or anything like that, just because they are afraid of something, right? Because they see threat in it. Education is the best way to fix that, which is the entire reason that I stream. It's the entire reason that I make comics, is because they are edutainment. All of my comics actually try to teach you something at the end of it. I very much have like an Animaniacs sort of perspective. Like it's like, if I have to teach you something, I'm going to teach you something real random and nonsensical. But also like it's what's baked in there is a little bit of truth. You know what I mean? Of my own sort of messages that I would hope the world kind of absorbs. And when it comes to AI imagery in particular, it is the most powerful tool that any artist can use right now. Period. I had another artist call it a steroid for my work, and that it's unfair for me to be using it. And I was like, oh yeah, no, and I'm not denying that at all. This is 100% a unfair advantage, which is why I am conscious of that. I do not post more often than other artists. I do not create content that otherwise would be alarming or jarring to them, without necessarily having purpose behind it. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not just going to make a random comic of Victor like slicing and dicing some people, because that's just terrible. Like that's just being, completely vindictive and completely lame. But I very much am aware that when it comes to creative folks, seeing has like wanting to impose rules on AI imagery, particularly, good luck. I mean, there's no way you're going to be able to tell what is and what isn't generated right now. So it's like, I mean, that goes for right now too. Most of the stuff that I'm like, the worst way you can actually you can get an artist to be on board with this stuff is by tricking them. The last thing you want to do is be like, haha, everything was generated. Haha, you just absorbed AI content. Haha. Like that is such a jackass move. I'm sorry, but like that is
saying, oh, you're a vegan, you just ate real meat.
Yeah. I mean? Oh my God. Yeah, that's such a good parallel. Yeah, as someone who is a vegetarian, yeah, no, if someone did that to me, I'd punch them. You know what I mean? Like it's just, that's how it is. Don't do that. Like, don't make content that is intended to upset. I make content that is controversial in a sense that it is how it's made is controversial. It is not controversial in terms of its content. I am 100% trying to tell you Victor's backstory, like where he comes from and what is inside the black box, like all that kind of stuff is me like making active commentary. It is not me just lampooning other artists or anything like that. That's not a way to get to get creative people on board. I can tell you that right now.
You know, and I hope you realize that you're finding a new audience here, and finding people that actually can relate to that. And I know that like it's hard to deal with people that you dealt with before who aren't actively ready to accept anything or any kind of change. But
Yeah, and that's the vast majority of people I work with.
I know, but like here we are. We're here now. Find us.
No, you guys are the right crowd for me. I realized that I was barking up the wrong tree for a long time trying to appease all my creative colleagues,
This
and
tree is happy to be barked up by you.
there is something though I gotta mention about that where there's a couple creatives who've spoken out about me particularly that because like I am posting as original content to like Reddit and other things like that. People don't really understand that OC doesn't mean that it has to be hand drawn. Like you can literally, for Reddit anyway, on r-comics, you're allowed to upload sticky notes. You're up like there's an entire artist that uploads sticky notes as his medium. Another artist that does collage of real life photos, and they're both like semi popular and stuff, but none of them drew anything. Like the sticky notes guy, yeah, he draws, but it's just stick figures, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Just means nobody posted it before.
Yeah, it just means that you were the origin of this new content. Like even if it's transformative, it's still original because you are making it into something new. Assuming you did, like if you just copy a meme and then call it a OC, then yes, that's not OC.
But also it means original character, which can be confusing sometimes.
Yeah, and I think original character is probably like the lesser known of the two. Besides loving the letter V, what are your obsessions you find slipping into your work? Okay. Fog. The thing is that I'm kind of obsessed with blending modes. Most of my stuff in Photoshop is me taking advantage of blending modes to be able to merge prompts together and stuff. The Wheel of Morality from AC, honestly, like the original Animaniacs was like my cornerstone of like humor. Yeah, the new Animaniacs is so bogged down by licensing, and they're not able to have nearly as much fun as they used to be able to have. I've never seen so much political commentary in a cartoon show for kids. Like it is amazing. I love Animaniacs.
Have a screen name that was like just a picture of Slappy Squirrel because that was like my spirit animal.
Right. Yeah, she. I could see you having a Slappy Squirrel as your even as like your. You know how like there are some people that have like Tweety Bird on their shirt and stuff like that, and you're like, okay, yes, they're a Looney Tunes person. Like it's. I would say especially before streaming stuff, there was a lot more like corporate mascot. Yeah. I could see you wearing a Slappy Squirrel shirt, for sure.
Those old timey like big oversized Warner Brothers Slappy Squirrel t-shirts, like with my baggy jeans.
This GIF, by the way, is so lewd. It is so lewd because it's talking about Prince and finger. Oh yeah, I'm not gonna get into that, but it's so freaking funny.
There's the best jokes in the original series.
It is. Yes, yeah. The number of double entendres in Animaniacs, the original series Animaniacs, is just amazing. And I don't know how. Like the only reason they got through the censors on it was because of Spielberg. A lot of people don't know that Animaniacs is Spielberg making fun of himself and his own career. A lot of the people that are referenced in it are old movies. Like I'm talking like silver era films and stuff that kids would never even know who any of those people are, but Spielberg makes it go through just because he's like, that's funny to me. So it's just a bunch of writers pandering to Steven Spielberg, and almost all the media that's used in it is because Spielberg was involved in it in some way or some shape or whatever. So everyone was pretty honored to be represented in Animaniacs because they knew that meant Spielberg liked what you did. And so yeah, that's pretty cool. I will say that in terms of the character that we were working on here, this turnaround with the kid with the spaceship and stuff, like it really lets us be able to envision what we can do with this, but it's really meant to just be like kind of an impromptu demo and not necessarily like making the most usable stuff, the usable stuff comes from when I have a complete turnaround. So for example, I was trying to show that you're able to use props by essentially panning and moving around. But if our turnaround included the boy with the ship, so like Keen, for example, if he drew his character having a face front, like him in the spaceship moving forward, him in the spaceship completely profile and not a 2/3 as it is here. Let me actually pull that up here. If you had hand drawn turnarounds, we would be able to make the ship continuous, just like the boy is continuous, but he would always be sitting in that ship. We would need to actually create a turnaround for the boy and maybe even a turnaround for the ship on its own. So then we can like say like, okay, if the kid needs to walk up to the spaceship, we have a turnaround of him that we can inject into and then pan to the left or pan to the right or even pan up and then include the spaceship without the boy in it at all in order to say like that he's walking up to his ship or something like that. Most of the stuff that Midjourney gives you will be like super centered. It'll be like the character you notice is always dead center on this. I do hope that if there's an anchors update, that it would basically let us be able to do like, all right, I want the character on the right side of the screen. I want the character on the left side of the screen. Basically, give quadrants for where the feature set is, as opposed to the latent space. Because right now the feature set is always in the middle, and the latent space is always around it. And maybe I'm not using those terms 100% correctly, but I also use latent space narratively. Like I try to describe latent space as like in a way that would probably upset David, where I'm describing it as a real place that you can go to. I've heard him talking during the office hours about how it's not a map. If you look at it as a map, it's not the correct way to look at it. But I kind of consider it more like at least the one time I got to talk to David directly was when I was first showing off some of the movie machine stuff, and it was the Plinko analogy that I think that was the only thing that was valuable that I responded with, honestly, where every time you send a prompt to Midjourney, it kind of acts like the ball that's dropped at the top of a Plinko board. Inside of the directing and latent space category, it has a GIF here for a Plinko or Plinko board. I keep calling it Plinko because I watch a lot of Red Letter Media. But the Plinko board though is essentially a bunch of pegs with a score at the bottom, right? Whenever you drop the ball, which is making your word only prompt, you're essentially every one of the words you include is another one of those pegs that is going to bounce and whatnot. If you do not change the order of the pegs, as in you don't change your prompts, things become much more predictable, and that's why a Plinko board is rather like you can predict which entry on the top is going to most likely get you into the center. There's a reason why I use the GIF of the kid hitting 10,000. I look at AI imagery very similarly to this, that you essentially just drop your prompt, and then the more times you repeat it, the more likely you're going to see patterns that are repeating or usable. So yeah, that's how I look at it, and it just helped me be able to visualize it. Even when you change like the weight of words in your prompt, you're essentially changing the size of the peg that it hits. You know what I mean? So you have this really wacky pegboard that gets made at the end of the day that you keep dropping into and hoping that you get the result that you want. So let's see. The pan is a very creative approach. Would you have thought of that without Midjourney? How much Midjourney influences your process? Okay. So I suffer from something called blank canvas dread. I can work for hours and hours and hours on an art piece, like a traditionally drawn art piece, but getting started is the hardest part for me. It's not necessarily a lack of vision or nothing like that. It's just the fact that I'm kind of like I have such a spastic brain that it's really hard for me to stay focused on one idea. And sometimes I just wouldn't know what's the good idea. What's the one thing that like makes me go like, yes, this is what I want to do. I get over this drawing traditionally sometimes. Like if I hop over to Photoshop here real quick, sometimes like whenever I'm drawing, sometimes I'll just start with orbs. You know what I mean? Just something to get myself a little bit of like, oh, there's a shape here that I might be able to, to take advantage of in order to make a character or whatever the face is or anything like that. And just by drawing those circles, I have an idea of perspective that I never really intended to do, and then I'll just keep fleshing this out. But the thing is that just starting with anything is sometimes really tough for me, especially if I was being paid to make something, it gets even way worse. It gets way worse when I'm responsible for something financially, like that's going to pay my bills. You know what I mean? And so I try my best anyway to make sure that whatever I end up drawing here. So let's just kind of bring up my pen size here. Whatever I end up drawing here, I just kind of like wing it until something like comes out like usable. You know what I mean? Like, because if I do this, I'll just show you guys this actually, how I would like expect a traditional artist more to do this. I had no intention to make him like do like a why I oughta kind of like, position here. But I'm just gonna give him a little bit of a collarbone, and then a little bit of neck here, and then let's just kind of finish a little bit of that here. And kind of give it a little bit of a face. Why I oughta. But we'll just go ahead and kind of flesh out a little bit of the hair here a bit. And I tend to be very, very loose, very, very abrasive, especially since I'm not really too worried about any sort of continuity of this character. But I get very lazy too, so like I tend to draw the same hair or whatever on certain characters. But for just the sake of demonstration, though, I'm going to just kind of show this here, and let's flesh out this hand a little bit here. And kind of give it a bit of a knuckle, I would say. Yeah, I don't want to get like too distracted with me drawing. Again, this is partly why like I didn't stream for so long, because I just didn't understand what entertainment would be derived from watching me just sketch things. I hated that hand. Robots and humans both hate drawing hands. That's the thing that kind of brings everybody together. So we all hate drawing hands. Let's just do something like that, just to get us somewhere. And I've got a little bit of a perspective shift on this, but now I'm going to grab this. We are just going to swap back over to Discord here and actually prompt with this little drawing that I did here. First, I'll paste my little sketch into Discord. I'll grab the URL for this, and I'll just do a character sketch. And, I won't even worry about like Niji or nothing like that just yet. And you can see it's a very bare bones kind of script, kind of like sketch. There's nothing really going on there. But look at this, just to give you a comparison of the two. So now we have the ability to say, hey, I got the posing I wanted. I got the imagery that I wanted. But it's all not right. Like the character's not right. There's none of that kind of stuff, right? It's just kind of me messing around. I'm not even trying to make Victor here. But even though I tend to always draw in a certain way. But what we can do now, though, is I can hit up-res on 2, okay? And then I'm going to inject Victor into this, okay? So let's go ahead and go Victor. And I'll do that with a strong as well. So with subtle, we're not going to see very many differences, but we will start to see some minor elements of Victor in there. Particularly what we can notice is that we have a little bit more of a pointed chin. That helps a lot to find that similarity, but also the ears start to point out a bit more of the rat punk starts to come out. But now with variation strong, look at that. We don't have the pose anymore, but we do have the sketchy style. We do have the imagery is starting to match, but it is way closer to my reference images than it is the original sketch. So we might be able to get away with simply doing an image weight on this. So like what we can do is copy this in. Let's take the URLs that I had for Victor, and I'm going to do a variation subtle, and then we're going to pump up the image weight to like 2. Actually, I'm sorry. That may work, that may not. We'll see what happens, just because the sketch isn't up front. So I can actually come into here as well, hit variation subtle, and then behind my sketch, behind my image, sometimes I have to do this, where I actually take my original sketch and then I put the image references behind that image, so the sketch has the highest priority of everything. What this should do is essentially establish the posing more. So if I come into here, you can see, look at that. The hand is all screwed up, but it's in the right position, It's all coming. It may be mirrored. A lot of stuff that comes out of Midjourney is going to be flipped or mirrored, but at the very least, we are starting to direct this character with my little sketches that I just did.
You guys can totally. This is just a note for the pores like me. It doesn't matter if you draw your image on a napkin. You don't have to have any fancy
Right.
image editing, anything. You can draw a picture, take a picture of it, and insert it as an image prompt as well.
Yeah, yeah. And what's really cool is you can actually do that with like yourself. Just go take a picture of ask someone to take a picture of you or whatever, or use a webcam, and you can get your posing that way. So I actually have a comic that will be coming out soon, and I'll just swap over here really quick. I actually have a comic that is coming out soon that is like about a tech review that shows off all of the stuff that I own in order to make my comics and stuff, including like my computer specs and such. And there's this really amazing young artist. I think she's like 17, 18. I don't know how old she is, but it doesn't matter. She has been very supportive of like seeing the kind of stuff that I've made and whatnot. But she's also a really big artist on Reddit and Instagram. And the thing is that the end of the comic is essentially saying I just use my phone, because I was shocked when I talked to her directly that there's so many comics from her that are just drawn with her finger on a phone. And I would have never thought of that. Like I would have never thought of using that to as my medium of choice, as my finger. She doesn't even use a pen or nothing like that. It's just all her finger. Like that blows my mind as someone who's done all sorts of different creative stuff. I just whenever someone uses technology in a way that simplifies things, I'm always kind of geeking out at that.
Do you think in prompts now?
I've certainly I think my brain has been changed because of generative stuff in a way that I'm okay. Let me put it this way. I don't have my mental crutches anymore. I don't, because I know that I can just rely on generative tech to kind of help fill the gaps when I get frustrated, right? Especially when I'm drawing stuff, like with Photoshop beta having inpainting now, and Midjourney hopefully coming soon with that. I really really use inpainting more often than I use outpainting, because I'm just kind of like going like, I want to change this little part of this picture. Let me just inpaint that real quick. But thinking in prompts, I can't use Google search anymore. I try using Google search and it's just like I end up writing prompts. I don't write search engine like queries.
We use Slack where I work, and I can't tell you how many times, because Slack is like the Discord for business. I can't tell you how many times I've gone into a chat with my coworkers just about to say like imagine. I caught myself typing imagine in the chat, and it was just lucky for me that I realized before I sent it.
Trying to use -- no in Google.
No. No. There's all sorts of like at least for me, I've used prompt weights inside of Google and it gets so confused. There's a question here though. I'm going to answer it real quick. Does anyone know how Victor is using that Victor prompt that gets it in to fill in all those links? Essentially, what this is called /prefer. And /prefer is how you can effectively save your characters for use later. There's a lot of other uses outside of character continuity for /prefer, but this is how I use it. Okay. We're going to write /prefer, and it's going to give you a bunch of options. Before you click enter or anything like that, you want to hit option set. Okay. You need to put the URLs inside of the value, and you need to make the name of the character that you're making. Victor. And that would let me be able to create this. But you notice that when I type that, it's already telling me that I have Victor back, and Victor Cowboy. Now, cowboy doesn't mean that he's like, rooting and tooting and he's going to have like a cowboy hat on. No. Yeah, yeehaw! No. What this does, what cowboy is, and I'll just show that really quick here. But that's how you get it. You essentially save, once you're 100% happy with the results, and you may not ever be, but as soon as you're happy enough, then you can just save all your URLs like that, quickly bring up your URLs from before. Right. It's basically just a copy and paste. It's not really too complicated. What I do want to show though, really quick, and it's not going to let me, and that is account specific, by the way, so you can do that on any server and be able to make them and bring characters over from one server to another doing that. So that's really cool. But what I want to show you though is the cowboy shot here. So if I do /imagine and then -- Victor and then underscore cowboy, and you don't have to use underscores. I don't think you just need to make it one word or whatever. But that lets us now just instantly get all the URLs for him in what is called a cowboy shot. A cowboy shot is from the hip up. So if I need Victor as a hip up shot, boom, there you go. I have Victor as a hip up. If I need Victor's backside, so Victor back, say for like an over the shoulder, like I'm talking to somebody, then I'll use Victor back. I'm in turbo mode, so everything's really, really fast here. It is something that you would not normally see this, but you notice here that there's nothing, like this is not his back at all. And that all comes down to the fact that a lot of those reference images are not from his back. If I went through and manually made a bunch of behind of Victor's head, like a 3/4 from the left ear or the right ear, yeah, I would be able to do it. But more often than not, I want you to see his face. You know what I mean? The thing is that if I open this first URL here, and then I open the second URL, there you go, second one here. So now I'll come into here, hit /imagine, and instead of using my command here, I can actually come in and just copy that one URL of Victor's back, and then we can say like anime, or just like over the shoulder, and then knee G5, just to really encourage a drawn style for this. We should see a character with a dark shirt and black hair. That's essentially what I'm aiming for with this, but it's only using this one image as a reference. And then I can dial in more and more Victor the more that I want by just continuously remixing and stuff. But this at least gets me my pose, and it's over the shoulder, as in that you can see a little over the shoulder. But now I'm going to grab whichever one I think has the closest silhouette, which might be this one, the third one here. There's probably a better result if I just re-rolled it, but I mostly want to emphasize here that if I now come into here and hit variation subtle and then just use Victor back and delete the URL that I had before, remember that the variation subtle is only going to change the context of the image. It's not going to change the whole image, you know? So it is something that we can kind of take advantage of by knowing what our URLs are, knowing what the intention is here, like or sorry, what each URL has in it. So we can kind of zoom in here and take a look. And although the hair isn't really right for my character continuity, we are getting the direction. We are getting the character. This is a lot closer to what I would think Victor is, right? But he's not. It's not him. It's not the image we're injecting into is not. It doesn't have his hair, so it doesn't look too right. But it does have some other characteristics of Victor. Not a ton, honestly, but it is. I'm basically just demonstrating the fact that you can do this multiple times until you get to the image you want. You really, whatever you start with, especially a word only prompt, is going to dictate everything else from that point onward. So I hope that answers that question. Can you just keep remixing and eventually get character continuity? I would have told you back during version 3 that that's a fool's errand, right? To just keep re-rolling, you're just going to burn your account or whatever. But the more and more the Midjourney gets advanced with this stuff, it's really tough for me to say that to just keep re-rolling it and see what happens. You'll begin to see a pattern, and eventually you'll just get frustrated that pattern isn't giving you what you want, and you try something else. You know what I mean? The character continuity is entirely based on your own intuition and knowledge of what kind of, at least what it means to have an original character, right? So like if I have a character turnaround and the character's clothing changes every time it turns around, every future image that I generate will have different clothes. But if I'm able to go into an image manipulator like Photoshop or MS Paint or whatever, and just redraw the parts that are different between each turnaround until they all match, suddenly everything is continuous. And that's all because you did the due diligence and made sure that everything was nice looking. It might be something where even taking a traditional Photoshop class will massively benefit you for this stuff. And how many remixes on average do you need to get to a level of happiness and quality? Thank you for explaining it. All right, so you know, sometimes it's the first generated thing, but I always make sure to run a couple more just to make sure that I'm not like, happy with something else. You'll quickly find out, at least when trying to use this stuff as like a creative tool, is that it is a rabbit hole. And oftentimes you end up at dead ends. And those dead ends you just kind of have to work around because I look at Midjourney as a collaborator. I don't look at it as a Photoshop plus. I don't look at it as a as a program. I look at it as a almost like a creative partner, which means that they also have their own vision. They also have their own insight and experiences to share. Not that they actually do; it's entirely simulating that, but it helps a lot to kind of pretend like there's a robot in the room and that robot is the one that's going to be helping you out. You know what I mean? And it's not, and it's autonomous. Like it has an element of its own understanding of what you're saying. So kind of imagine that you're collaborating with someone that doesn't speak your language. You know what I mean? And everything that you try to input to it is something close to what you want to say, but maybe you have to rephrase it in a different way, or you have to change it, or maybe even say it slowly. And the equivalent to saying it slowly for Midjourney is to be a little redundant. Like for example, Victor is black shirt, black hair. I always want these two results together. And sometimes that redundancy makes everything super dark, but it helps me attain some continuity. Can this be done with a prop? How about a photo or prop on a turntable with 360 views? Would that be stable enough? It really depends on the prop. It really does. So I did a prop where someone went back in time and smacked the knife out of Jack the Ripper's hand. Right, that was one of my like fun little explorations. The thing is that I really wanted that knife to be continuous, and the problem is that swords and knives, particularly, they tend to be these like flat bladed things that when you change perspectives on them, they really change shape. Like it's basically like the more paper thin something is that your character's holding, the more likely it's going to be wiggly and wonky and all sorts of different things. I tended to get a lot more rapiers and other like other thin swords rather than a knife. I know that doesn't answer your question entirely, but most of the props that do well tend to be things that are relatively symmetrical and maybe have a continuous form. Like for example, a lasso may sound like something that's hard, but it's not. It's just a loop, and that loop is something that can be easily transcribed into different. You're gonna make AC is gonna make me make a freaking cowboy Victor right now because I want to show a prop. So I'm gonna do that right now.
Cowboy Victor.
I've accidentally prompted so many cat boys, especially with Victor and the rat punk stuff. But let's just do cowboy. Okay, fine, cowboy, catboy. There we go. We'll see what it do. And I might run it under Niji and see what we get. Oh no, it's gonna look like cats. It's gonna be cute little cats. Let me go ahead and just turn on Niji here because it's as much as I love realism, there's some really fun stuff that came out of this alone. Like I would love to watch an entire Fievel Goes West in live action like this.
Come on.
If any of you all remember Fievel Goes West, it's really funny because I didn't know there was an original movie. I only knew the sequel, right, when I was younger. And so I was like, oh yeah, it's the movie where he's in the cowboy, like it's like gonna be cowboys and there's trains and all. It's like, wait, what? What movie are you talking about? Let's go ahead and turn on Niji 5 for this. Oh yeah, no, it's there's a couple. Someone mentioned Secret of Nim earlier, and that is the core. That if there was anything, so I would say like a cornerstone for my comedy is Animaniacs, but a cornerstone for like my enjoyment of film and animation particularly is Secret of Nim. Secret of Nim is by far, I think, my favorite animated film of all time. It has so much heart in it. It's not made by Disney. It's actually a Don Bluth film. A lot of people think it's a Disney film, but it's not. Yeah, let's go ahead and just inject Victor into this catboy cowboy right here. So I'll come in and hit very strong first, just because, why not? We'll do Victor on this one. This is, again, using the /prefer commands to get all of our URLs baked into Midjourney. So let's just do Victor here as well on the subtle. and we'll get there. But is there any other questions?
Uzugas asks, and I think I know the answer for this. Why was there a run of mouse movies? And I think like they do that though, don't they? Like where there was Armageddon, and then there was that one with the tidal wave.
Yeah,
But
and there's a
during
reason.
that time-
Yeah, I was just going to say there's a reason for that, and it has to do with the fact that the studios are constantly fighting each other. The thing is that especially with how competitive Hollywood is, the studios tend to know about a production that happens within days of it happening, like within days of it getting greenlit. Whether it gets on Variety and they make news about it or whatever, but or it doesn't, and it's just kind of like murmured to different studio executives. The reality is that when one studio does something, it means that they might have some market insight into why they're doing it, so the copycat gets born. And I saw this with A Bug's Life. That was the first time I recognized it. At least in me going like, oh, that's different. Was seeing A Bug's Life and the movie Ants side by side with each other, and I was like, why is there 2 ant movies at the same time, and they're both animated? Like, and they're both 3D. You know what I mean? Like, what the heck? And it was one of those things where it's one of the studios heard that Disney was making a movie about ants and using 3D technology to do it. So they went, we got to get on this ant game. Let's go. And then they made Ants, which is essentially like the B movie but for ants.
That one specifically is because Katzenberg is petty.
yeah. A lot of these studio guys are yeah. I mean, when it comes to like the Armageddon films and all that stuff, it's very similar story where it's essentially these production studios, they hear about the green lights, and they want to light their own green lights that are very similar because they know that if people are going to be in the mood to see an Armageddon movie, they might want to see another Armageddon movie too. It's kind of social behavior sort of stuff. They had market research that told them, yeah, that's what we want to do. But let's take a quick look at these cat boys, and then I'll answer a couple more questions. So, yeah, it's far more cat. But this one, we're actually getting a little bit of Victor in here, at least a little bit. I like the top right one. That's straight. That has a little bit of Victor's face in it. It's got the ears. He's definitely he's almost ready to pull out a gun kind of attitude with this here. But the other 3 are not Victor, in my opinion. And you'll notice this with character continuity. The more and more you get into this stuff, the more likely you're going to see you're going to be able to tell your character apart from the crowd.
More of a I want to seduce you thing going on.
Yeah, probably a bit. But if I upres this, sorry, which one? This one here. If I upres this, we actually have the starts of another turnaround that's possible. You can see on the sides there, we have some faded versions of it. That means that there might be more turnarounds the more we pan or zoom. So I'm going to just pan left and pan right on this, and we can see what just comes off of the image references. But what we can also do to kind of force it, we can come into here, delete everything except for Cowboy Catboy. And then I do still need to make a Victor like profile, right? Like going like this where I write profile and do that kind of thing. I just haven't done it. But what we can do is essentially start to inject, okay, I want specifically a profile view, multiple expressions.
Why do you think it is, AC, that cowboys don't come out the same way that cat boys do? Like they don't have spots or udders?
Probably more influence from the actual cowboy concept. Just as a guess.
Just checking.
Yeah, go ahead.
I've seen some things that I'd rather not talk about on here.
Yeah, that's how it goes, right? It's whenever we're, especially when we're kind of deep diving into different like area, especially like the internet and stuff like that, I can only imagine the amount of stuff that you guys had to filter through to kind of I kind of saw it very similar to like crime investigation photos, where it's like that's a job no one can mentally handle for very long because it's just so much awfulness that you're staring at. I'm wondering if there's an equivalent for image generative stuff. I know that it doesn't exactly work like that. You're more focused at making sure the images that go into the data set are unique and authentic and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, the idea of having to police AI imagery just sounds like a nightmare to me.
Both things are true. They're not mutually exclusive.
But I did want to show here the differences between the results we got here. This one is pan right, And you can see that we lost Victor a bit. Maybe a little bit we kept on this, but the rest of them aren't really there. That was just because I just did a pan, and it's going to try to repeat but give some variety to it, basically. But then if I go in and pan left, almost the exact same results, where they're not very usable. There's a bit of a close-up. I like this one. Again, Victor props with coffee a lot. And I'm a big coffee drinker, which made me feel very like seen whenever this happens. Yeah, whenever a image prompts where it prompts coffee at all, but whenever that happens, I'm like, how do you all know? How do you know? When it comes to being like, anonymous on the internet and stuff like that, I personally think that the image generative stuff is going to kind of at least be it's going to be used as a fear mongering thing to get people to pass like C2PA and all sorts of other essentially digital ID kind of stuff. And we're gonna be getting into all sorts of weird wonkiness, and they're all gonna blame AI about it. Like all of them will. I mean, just look at the EU AI talks and stuff. But let's see about any other questions. I want to move off from this topic. Let's see here. There are so many end of the world videos at the same time back then. Oh yeah. You're talking about like the late '90s millennium fear. Yeah. So back when Y2K was a legitimate fear from people, like it's so funny to talk about now. And I feel like this is how silly we feel about Y2K right now. Which if you're a Gen Zer and you don't know what I'm talking about, just a quick refresher. Everyone thought the world was going to end when the year 2000 hit. There was a very strong suspicion that all the computer systems, all the digital systems that we had been integrating into our workspaces and stuff, were suddenly going to stop working because of the year 2000 flipping over clocks, like basically saying, here's the calendar that we never built digital calendars to accept. That's not true at all. That was all. There's so much fear mongering. It would have only applied to some very dated like IRS computers, like computers that still use ticker tape and stuff. Yeah, you could probably make a really great parallel between Y2K and AI today.
Am I asking too much out of MJ by trying to keep uniforms the same for my characters, like specific glowing shapes on the chest? Or do you think that if I redraw a thing, do you think I can usually manage to keep it? Or should I just simplify it all somehow?
Okay. All right. So let me give you a little bit of insight into my kind of approach to this, because I do cheat a little bit. It's not just the use of V's. It's not just the use of like certain like I even have a V-neck on my shirt. You know what I mean? Like it's not just the use of V's. It's what it really comes down to is the fact that Victor is a very simple silhouette. He is a generic anime character, sure, but the all like kind of black outfit and stuff means that it's pretty predictable what sort of spaces I'm going to fall into when we talk about like image injection and all that kind of stuff. The biggest one being is that I have a very clear silhouette. It is something that I'm not really too worried about. There's no details on my chest. My shirt changes all the time whenever I prompt stuff and I have to fix it manually. Sometimes I'll have a zipper. Sometimes there'll be a button up that has another shirt underneath it and stuff. Like there's some elements of that I can't control, but that's where manual cleanup comes in. You know what I mean? Like the idea is that we're cutting out 80 to 90% of the work, not that we're getting a completed thing. Now we can almost make completed comics, using the comic prompts and trying to make panels or forcing panels. And Niji oftentimes just makes panels, so it's easy to do that. But I guess one of the big things is that my character design is one where I went through a bunch of sketches of my old stuff because I was so fascinated with Midjourney, taking my hand-drawn art and turning it into something else, right? Like whether it's like a painting or whatever. I only found out about the turnaround stuff because I got to Victor inside of my sketchbook, who was a character that I drew multiple times. I was one of those kids that doodled on their homework or doodled on their tests and then realized they had 2 minutes before the test finished and there was no bubbles filled. It was just a doodle of Victor in the corner. When I took a photo of his sketch, which is actually in the image references, when I took a photo of his sketch, I I went through and I was like, hold on, this is really really reliable. Like the results I'm getting for it are really really good. And it took me a while to kind of write the whole tutorial to explain what I had found. But you'll notice that yes, he's got skin tone on the arms and neck and face, but the overall silhouette is a black shape all the way around. And when he is a silhouette, as in you don't see any of these details, it really doesn't change that much. So that means that as I inject him, I'm falling into this kind of dark space with him. Almost always, there's some element of darkness that's here, and that lets me be able to have at least a controllable. Now, based on what AC told me, if I would have used an alpha channel here instead of the white box that's around the character, you would almost completely lose the character entirely because he's already black. It would be black on black then, and the character, only the things that Midjourney would really see would be the subtle deviations in color and his skin. Now, I do have to say really quick, I'm going to point this out for AC here. You did manage to get one with the little cat mouth on Victor here because of that. Now this is from the back ones, but I just want to point that out that you got it. There you go. There's the face. But yeah, overall though, there could be an entire kind of class, not really a class, but an entire kind of like deep dive exploration into what are hyper repeatable character designs, as in like what are things that are otherwise very easy to reproduce. If you have a chest emblem, if you have something that repeats on their body, right? You probably want to make that very high contrast to what's around it. You probably want to make that very obvious to the rest of the shape here. I can add a lot of detail and come in here. So like if I come in and I'm just going to go through my original characters here, and there's a lot of folks that have been contributing this since my last stream, and I really appreciate that. That's super cool to see. But this is gonna let's deep dive into this here. So this is from a user named Ewerton, and he made this turnaround of a cool like robot dog, right? I can kind of imagine it being like he was a normal dog at one point, and then they gave him like mechanical parts to turn him into a person, right? And so what I did with this, and this is going to kind of lay into some of the consistency issues. What I did for this was I first took all the notes from the person who made it. So they said that they tried to make it and they had all sorts of issues with, and I'll kind of zoom in here. They had all sorts of issues with getting the continuity, right? Like you can see that there's like all sorts of different results that were coming off of the same seed. And this might be just by sticking too closely to seeds, right? Where you're like, I have to use this seed because it's a turnaround in the seed. That will get you hyper repeatable results, sure, but the continuity is never there. The seeds will always add a level of complexity to that. That it's not the seeds that will, but anyway, that's the point. Is that I wanted to show that that's how a lot of people have been trying to do it, but the reality, at least for me, was I just wrote the prompt: cartoon wolf dog, cyberpunk cat core, elongated form, industrial machinery aesthetic. That all came from image like descriptors from the original turnaround, the character that was submitted. And then I got this result here. This was the result that I got. And you'll notice that looks nothing like the character, but it has the features of the character. It's wearing a jacket. Yeah, it's wearing, its pants are too big. And but he's got metal arms. He's got realistic ears. The face is the right kind of animalistic face. There's a lot right about this image that even though on face value it may not seem like it, right? You do not need all those details, because if we now do an injection into this with the character art that we had before, the turnaround that's here on the right side of the screen, we got this. Let me pull this up on the right side here, and then I'll compare it with the turnaround here. I mostly wanted to show out of this though was that look how much closer we got just by doing an image injection into this picture here. So if I come into here, if you remember, the original image looks nothing like this character except for the fact that it's starting to retain some element of the same shape and whatnot. He doesn't even have metal shoulders, right? But suddenly the character does because we're injecting into it and there's all sorts of reference material for it to base it off of. So I had a little fun with this character because I thought the result was particularly cool, right? So then I went ahead and did some turnarounds using using the one of the same prompt, and you notice I got the guy. There he is. He's got maybe a couple things inconsistent here and there. He's got like tufts in his ear and stuff, but he's got the goofy face, especially this one. I just love this face right here. But then when I pan to the right, I realized I had a shot. I had a comic that I could have made, right? And so I took just this image here, okay, and I then panned left off of the original image and then told it to make Victor. And I just said, if I get too close to you, there are consequences. And just for the sake of for AC especially, yes, I get Victor does have animal ears on this one as well. A little more cat boyish noise, but he also has regular ear too. But the whole point is that if I inject Victor too close to this character, he will start to share attributes of this character. If I pan to the left one more time and then injected Victor, so there's this big white space in between them, I would have a lot less animalistic elements inside of Victor, less anthropomorphic elements. And I really like this particular panel here because it shows the height difference between the two characters. Like he's like a realistic large dog that's been given human legs, and while Victor is just like a dude. This is just super fun for me. But it shows you how you can use pan in a way that's super dynamic. So I hope that answers your question. I don't really know the level of merger that happens between these two, like between the images that you pan and whatnot, but there's always going to be some level of blending that happens in between the two. It is something that I'm pretty keenly aware that the closer I am to another character design, the more Victor changes. So this was an example of where I am taking advantage of that change and making a joke out of it, right? It's a little bit of an educational joke actually, because I'm quite literally telling you why Victor looks like the way he does. But if I then prompted Victor solo and then used Photoshop or another image manipulator to put him in the shot, obviously he will not have any more of those animalistic features because he is a separate prompt. Knowing when to use separate prompts will be something that you learn. It's just something you gain over time.
Quasi says, is there a way to teach MJ render in my particular drawing style?
Yes, that's using /describe. So you would just come into here, hit /describe, and then include your art in there, and then you're going to see a bunch of things that say like loose, sketchy line work, or harsh shading, or all sorts of other technical terminology. Just copy and paste that, and you'll get a lot closer to your art style. I have a great example of that, but it's very violent, so I can't show it to you all. But it is an example of saying basically, look, I took some kid's art, and he drew a little continuation of one of my comics, and I loved it. It was the little SCP thing. Someone thinks I just love the fact that there was a kid who looked at my comics and went,
No, I want to see it.
this guy's a new SCP. Oh my god! And I loved it, so I made a little continuation of it, and that's all using the sketch method where I sketched yeah, I'll send it to you when I get it posted. But essentially, I took his really rough, clearly MS Paint sketches, and I injected those into there. So it is something that you can use whatever art style you want. You can use whatever methods you want to inject into. But using /describe to get an idea of what's in there is going to help you a lot. It's going to help you a lot know, especially if you are a seasoned artist and you have a very particular way of doing things, you're going to see a lot more results. If you just sketch something random, like it's just every time you draw, it doesn't have a consistency to it because you're a novice or otherwise just learning, this doesn't help you very much. It helps you a lot more when you're like, I have a particular style of doing things. I like things done in a certain way. Then use /describe.
Question for me. What do you think about adding stylize? Because like when you go, stylize 1 to 1000, is it AC?
Mm-hmm.
You can glean like more towards however your immediate image was, or your artist or whatever, and then you give MJ liberty to change it depending on what end of the spectrum that you stylize it on.
Right,
Tried.
right. And I don't have too much experience with that outside of like specific styles like expressive and and scenic and stuff for Niji. But I'll say this about the styles. The only reason I tend not to use them is because I really just don't want my results limited.
What I'm saying is stylize. If you
Hmm.
stylize 1 to 1000, it takes you closer or further to the original style of the artist. On one end, it makes Midjourney have license to make it what it thinks is more beautiful, and on the
Hmm.
other end, it keeps it closer to what you originally input.
Okay.
So
Nice.
stylize and style are different. So I would love to see what you think if you took some time to look into that.
You'll get into doing this stuff in a certain way, and since language hasn't really been 100% determined for this stuff, like I used image injection. That was the wording I used for this process a lot. And one other kid, I don't know how old they are. I call everybody kid, but one other kid messaged me and went, "Hey, I call it image injection too. Here's my tutorial." And I loved it. I loved seeing that there was somebody else that was on the same wavelength as me. But that's the thing. It's a wavelength. Like I don't actually know what's the proper terminology, and I don't think anybody really does. It's an evolving medium, you know?
Yeah. So I want someone to be like, "Hey, I think that what you're doing is great, and I want to try to emulate it." I think that that's like amazing. I think that yes, stylize and styler are different, and I think that you should look into it because I would love to see what you glean from it because you seem to see Midjourney and the ways of using it in a totally different way than what I do. A lot of people are talking about how child drawing does like interesting things.
Well, I'll say this about the child's drawing stuff. I have tried to get Midjourney to draw like an infant, and it doesn't really do what I want it to do. Like I want it to
Just
try to
little
draw.
pixels.
Well, like I say, hey, give me rough crayon art, like whatever. And if I say infant or say child drawing or whatever, I get much better results when I prompt a fridge than when I prompt children's art. Like if I prompt like give me a refrigerator you know covered in drawings or covered in notes or whatever, I am far more likely to get what looks like children's art than by asking for children's art. It constantly over beautifies it, so you can get around it with like style raw and stuff. But it's yeah, little hacks like that you're gonna find for every project.
For that specific style, V1 and 2 are very good at it.
I bet. I
Making
bet.
it like that.
Because it was a baby then?
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
it was just those things that did remarkably well. Like, it was one of the weirdest moderation things I had to do back then because someone was making essentially children's drawings of gore, and it's like, this isn't technically bad. The prompt is horrible, though.
Right, right. You're more censoring the input image, like input information, as opposed to the output. But yeah, I've said this to a few creatives before. Like, look, guys, you're judging an infant's art. Do you go up to a kindergartner and say your art's so ugly and bad? Like, I don't do that. I don't get it anyway. Like, I go, that looks great, and then hang it up on the wall, and just like, even if you ignore it for a while, it's fine. Like, the whole point for me, like at least when I was getting started with Midjourney stuff, was like people were over focusing on like the quality of the output, and I was like, no, 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 no. I am fascinated with where this is going, like where this is going to be in 6 months, in a year, or whatever. I'm going to stay in tune with it. And people thought I was crazy back during V2, like V2, V3, or whatever. Especially when I just started my Midjourney account, and everything I was prompting was Kevin Bacon cooking bacon. Like it was all just nonsense. But the results
That's a
were really
quality video, by
fascinating.
the way. You guys should watch that on his channel.
Yeah, I deep dive into my initial prompts that I started Midjourney with, and I realized that as I was doing it, that there's all sorts of other like people that were prompting Kevin Bacon cooking bacon, so that made me laugh. But yeah, anything else?
I'm loving this format. I think that you have so much to teach, and like it'd be great for you to keep coming back on Fridays. What do you think
I
about
would
that?
love to. I would love to
Yeah,
make it a regular thing. Let's do it.
let's
Like
do it.
yeah, let's do it. The
Let's
the the
do it.
one the The one thing I think that will eventually happen, because obviously I'm going to eventually run out of material in terms of my last 6 months of deep diving into this stuff. I have a lot of stuff in that tutorial, but it's not infinite, and I am learning and putting new things in there all the time. But eventually I think I'm going to get to a point where I'm like, all right, educate, like class is over, now it's workshop time. And we're just going to mess around with stuff constantly, and I'm doing less teaching and doing more direction, right? Where it's like I eventually want to start a production studio where we're just a bunch of randos on the internet making entertainment. That would be a
Art
lot of fun.
collective?
Yeah, it's a bit like either a collective, but like I have to look at it as like a production studio, and we're gonna take down Paramount in order for me to like get the motivation to do it. Like, let's do it. Let's
I
just.
had to stop myself from saying the obvious swear that means heck yes.
Oh yeah.
But hey, Bob's Blaze is like, you're a good kid, Victor. I also say kid all the time. And I also, myself, Kinky Kong, says kid all the time because I'm from Boston. And
Uh-huh.
I would love this. And look at the approval in the chat, Victor. People
That's
want to see you on
awesome.
Fridays.
Yeah, I would love to come back and when it comes to doing like a proper like workshop kind of thing, I'm gonna do a lot less like sort of like bogged down stuff and start working at my speed. That's the one thing you guys haven't seen both in the last stream
That's
and this
right,
stream
Victor
is
Day, previously known as Friday.
so I do have a little Easter egg for you guys. The reason why Victor's name is Victor is because the spoils go to the victor. There's a especially when we start to talk about the antagonistic nature of the character and stuff like that. It's meant to be um, the fear mongering of AI personified into a real person, right? And so there's all sorts of like the intent is not to be upsetting or frustrating or anything like that, but it is meant to be a villainous character that is actually an anti-hero, that is actually trying to help you and trying to teach you and make you a better person and all that kind of stuff. And that's not obvious on face value, but a lot of his phrasings and stuff like that are going to be along the lines of the spoils. Victor goes to this. Spoils go to the victor kind of stuff, where you whoever ends up being the top dog of doing like generative stuff or traditional stuff or whatever you want to look at it as, the whenever you're making content and stuff, it's just a matter of who can output the most content at the highest quality. And there's always like balance between that, but generative tech is just such a huge leg up, especially for indie creators that they don't even recognize it yet.
The corpse of Paramount. The right brew says the spoils, quote unquote, being the corpse of Paramount.
Yeah. I wanna have Victor go inside the vault, right? Like the movie vault of Warner Brothers, and just like, having way too much fun in there. Like basically like it would be a lot of fun to do a bunch of corporate stuff, but I'm trying to avoid that because frankly I don't want to get in a trademark lawsuit. But like I very much am aware that I'm heading in the direction of wanting to start a production studio where we make entire like animated and live action stuff with generative tech. It doesn't matter if it's entirely generated or not, but I really want to make a studio that just kind of flips everything on its head.
I want an image of my cartoon self like straddling the Warner Brothers water tower.
Make a version of Animaniac character of your
Yes.
of an OC or something like that. Like I like
maybe it's Slappy Squirrel. I don't know, but
yeah, right. That'd be fun. Now, I do think a lot of the corporate stuff is very tempting for people. Like people will oftentimes like be like, okay, I want to make a Garfield joke, or I want to do something that uses a popular character that's been heavily trademarked and all that kind of stuff. My only recommendation to that is if you make any money, they're going to come after you. Like that's essentially what. Why do you think I don't charge anything? Because I know that everything I'm going to be doing is like super like either taboo or otherwise like edgy in that way. Yeah, exactly. It'll always come back around in some way, and like everything that I'm making is focused at the idea of of future.
Anything to like you're teaching people how to fish. Like if they become the world's greatest fishermen, they're going to remember you. Like there's so much benefit out of being a good person who teaches. Period.
Yeah, I look at it as I'm an educator first and a cartoonist second. You know,
Sure.
and a lot of the cartoonist elements of is born from my sketches and doodles as a teenager, as opposed to my time in industry. Most of the people I worked with in Hollywood did not know that I draw. Um, it was just the fact that that's not what I was hired to do, so I didn't really show it off. It's absolutely insane. Have you seen this? Oh, are you talking about Corridor? I can see it at the end of your link there. Corridor Crew. Yeah, those guys are pretty neat. Yeah, those guys are pretty cool. I really didn't like how they talked about the what do you call it? There was one word that they used, democratizing. Yeah, those phrases really bothered me when they were kind of pushing that stuff, because I was like, there's a lot more beneficial ways you could have described this, but you made it very combative to get views on YouTube.
The link to that video, or
I didn't actually check the link, but the thing is that I consider it enabling, empowering. Those are much better words than democratizing art. Art, you can make art on the walls. You know what I mean? Like, screw it. That's what graffiti is. Just draw on the walls. You know what I mean? But when it comes to generative tech in general, it's just you can't kid that this is going to be like a massive element to how people entering the industry. Yeah, it's just huge. Yeah, I didn't like that bit either. 100%. It's like the link of the video is just a raw thing, no commentary. Okay. Yeah, just making sand. It really does help to work with temporary mediums. When it comes to the generative stuff, like the folks who are like, I have to cherish every piece of art that I draw, tend to be the worst artists that I know. I'll just be straight up about that. But I don't need to keep it all. I don't need to be stuck in a rut. Picasso has a famous quote that is, it's not. I really don't like the great artist steal line. It's overused by AI users. But let me just make sure I quote it correctly. Let me grab a URL here. What? Why does my mouse just disappear sometimes? I really don't.
While you're looking for it,
Yeah.
I'm just gonna say this. Like, I think that one of the best ways that I've ever realized that I grew as an artist is looking back at my old art.
Uh-huh.
I would never have any kind of faith in myself if I didn't look back. It's like I'm a small girl. I'm a big girl, right? But like, I've always thought I was a big girl. So sometimes when I'm feeling myself and I'm like, oh, I look good, and then I look back at myself years later. I'm like, oh my God, I wish I was fat now, like I was fat then. Like, when you look back at your art that you thought was crap then, and you look at your art now, and you have something to compare it to, it's like, it's helpful, I think.
It is, and I'm not saying trash everything. I'm not saying trash. I just take more of I'm not a Buddhist. I'm not into that stuff like at all. But I do really appreciate the idea of doing sand art or doing other things that otherwise are going to wash away and be very temporary, very ephemeral in that way. Like, it's meant to be something that just kind of is temporarily here and then it's not. And the problem with digital art is the fact that it can never really truly be temporary like that. You will always have the ability to do backups and copies and stuff like that. So as much as I agree with you in terms of like, you need to like save periodically, that's what all my public posts are, or me just sharing a lot of the cataloging of my own progress, right? But at the same time, I also shed away the skin. Like, if you look at it as like, I don't want to get stuck. And the quote from Picasso is, to copy others is necessary, but to copy oneself is pathetic. And the reason why that quote is so important is because there's a certain commercialization that happens with people's styles, quote unquote, where essentially you get bought because your style fits a particular, like, it's really sellable. It's really like people just eat it up, right? And if you want to change anything, it is so miserable to have to draw or create the thing that literally gives you frustration and angst. I'm not going to name the artist, but there's an artist who's very popular right now who's going through that, who is going through this moment of saying, everyone wants me to make these comics, but I really hate these comics, honestly. I really hate the way that this character looks. I really hate how all this is.
This particular topic next week, because that's how I feel about my art.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm happy to deep dive. I guess the one thing I was really saying there was that that it having a personal, like, sort of frustration with your own art, with your own things, it really comes more out of the pressure, you know the demand for you to conform. And I always, my style has changed so drastically that I just went, screw it, I'm going back to being 13 again, and we're going to make angsty comics about like black haired kids, like, let's just do it, black hair anime protagonist kid, let's go.
Yes.
Like, yeah,
Like,
so
I don't like my own style of art. That's why I don't do so much. Like, I don't like I don't. There are people in the world that find my art beautiful. I'm not one of them.
next time I'm gonna get into the like, if you remind me, Kinky, I'm happy to get into the actual dislikes of doing art, like where people assume, like, here's a great tell for an AI user. I love my art. That is a tell that you make that you didn't draw that at all. It's like, especially as a seasoned artist, like no seasoned artist says they love their own work. It's just something that it just, outside of a few blue moon situations and whatnot, I have a list that I have prepared, that we'll get into next time, but it's essentially saying all the verbal tells, like all the tells from people's behavior that lets you know, oh, they didn't draw it, they generated it. They might say they're drawing it because they don't know any better words to use, and it's not really their fault because they just don't have the verbiage to describe it. But yeah, they're not actually they're not they're not a seasoned artist by any means, because they're clearly going, oh my god, I love it too, or whatever.
I really am, and I'm so happy to have you on Fridays, and I hope everybody comes more and tells their friends. And
yeah, I mean, look, yeah, if you guys just feel free to, like, chat about it in any one of the clubs or anything of the any of the text chats and stuff. If you guys had a good time here, I would love to see the conversations that get birthed out of this. I feel like the next time that we're going to be streaming, okay, we're going to get into competitive panning, where essentially, that's what I'm going to call it anyway, where we pan and then I ask you, or I generate an image and then I'm going to ask the entire group to pan into it, right? So say, like, here's a picture of Victor and he's going to get punched. I want you to tell me who is punching him. Okay? And you do that entirely with pans. Yeah, a pantition. Yeah. Compantition. Yeah. Because I can easily have someone like gripping Victor's neck as like a chokehold, right? You just do wrestling prompts. Wrestling prompts are the best way to like, you give the words of the wrestling move, and then you go, all right, it's a pile drive. All right, Victor's getting pile driven. And you would think, okay, that's going to get me a bunch of sexual stuff, but it doesn't. And it's all because of WWE. Just add WWE in it, or WWF, and particularly WWE, because that's modern. But yeah, if you just add wrestling prompts, you can essentially get people like wrestling each other. And then I just have to ask you guys to pan left or pan right, depending on where the arms are coming from, to like make that anybody you want. You know what I mean? If you want Mickey Mouse choking me out, do it. You know what I mean? Like, that sounds so funny.
Can Victor wrestle a panda? Because
no, Victor would get his ass kicked by a panda. Like I think one of the things with Victor is that he doesn't actually, like, in terms of canon, in terms of my storytelling of the character and stuff like that, he's never, up until recently, had any actual flesh and blood. Like, he's the first thing he says when he escapes the black box is going to be, I can feel my body rot. That is the first thing he's going to say as soon as he leaves, and it's just going to emphasize how much how much has changed in that moment of the character, where he can start to feel things he never felt before. But yeah, I can feel my body rot. I'll end the stream on that one.
Hey, thanks everybody for coming out tonight. It was a good time, and thank you for coming to Victor Gnarly's character continuity part 2. I like watching your body rock around while I say that. Sorry, that distracted me a little bit, but he's gonna be here on Friday nights, and it doesn't have to be so solid. Or I think this is great. I think this is a good format the way we had it tonight. And come on back, tell your friends. All right.
Yeah, I'd love you all to join for sure. That'd be a lot of fun to see where we actually, because again, the more and more I do this, the more we're going to be leaning on workshops as opposed to classes. Because it's, you know, if you wanna learn, I'm recording everything to YouTube, so you can go to my YouTube channel and learn. But eventually, I'm going to run out of material, and I'm just going to start making really silly stories with y'all, and that sounds like a lot more fun to me, honestly.
Back and forth. I think a lot of it will be that way, and I think that's absolutely fantastic. But what I'm doing right now is putting your links in the chat so that people can find you on your tutorial, your YouTube, and I think you need your Twitch channel. I don't have.
Yeah. It's just twitch.tv/VictorGnarly. A lot of these channels, y'all, are going to be really small because I only started streaming recently. My YouTube channel has some old legacy stuff on it, particularly a meme that I didn't like. I recorded some footage from my local news and it blew up as a meme. I'll end the stream on that one actually. So we're gonna come outside here, and we're gonna come in here, and I'm just going to play the meme that, oh, I thank you for following. I really appreciate you following on my Twitch. Yes, there will be a note. I don't think it says kitty anymore, so that's good, at least for now. But I'm just gonna go to my YouTube channel here. That is not my. Oh God! Stop it! I'm gonna go to my YouTube channel here.
I did that.
No, that was my bad, y'all. But yeah, if I come to my YouTube channel here, I'm actually gonna go really far back. I'm gonna go real far back here. Just to my oldest videos here. Yeah. This here is honestly, and this is stupid, but it's just the meme that blew up my YouTube channel. It's the reason why I have 3,000 subscribers before starting all this stuff. So here you go.
When I finally got down here to the house to look see what happened, the door was standing wide open. It looked like he was packing up for a yard sale. He was lying, throwing his hands, and he did pull a gun on me when I got back around the house because I guess he thought I was upset with him. Who steals a cheese grater? He's got the works, Lysol. He stole an empty bottle of spray. What got me the most was my soap. He stole my soap. Who steals soap?
Okay, I recorded that on my television. And then it blew up with 1.5 million views. That's back when I lived in the South and whatnot, and it was yeah. So who steals soap? That Appalachian accent is so great. I love the Appalachian accent.
Oh my God.
A lot. It's unfortunate people call it stupid, but it's it's actually really elegant. When you see it kind of pronounced properly. And that guy is straight up Appalachian Harvard. Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, I'll end it there, guys. Thank you so much for joining. I really appreciate you all coming. All right. See you guys.